Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, HITLAB community around the world. Welcome to the October HITLAB Symposium. And today we're going to be talking about wearables and what's happening with the ecosystem when it comes to AI and wearables, and obviously talking a lot about AI as that's rapidly being adopted around the world as well. My name is Stan Kichnowski. I chair HITLAB, the Healthcare Innovation Technology Lab. We are an evidence-driven lab looking for identifying, testing, and then promoting the most efficacious digital technologies in healthcare and life sciences. And I'm really happy to have everyone here today. Please look me up on LinkedIn. I am happy to take any questions and add any more agenda topics for the 2026 season or even the summit that's going to be coming up. And we'll talk more about that later in New York City in December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And we're going to start off today with a company from Israel that's making massive inroads into the US healthcare system and advancing what is happening with AI in the system as well. And with me today is Shlomi Utzil from Quai MD. Shlomi, how are you doing?
Hi, pleasure being here. Thank you very much. Great to see you. Great to be here.
Really appreciate you joining today. And if you could just start by giving everybody a little bit of your background, that would be great.
Spent most of my career in the semiconductor industry and then decided to take that and apply it to healthcare and actually push the needle on patient outcomes and more efficient workflows within the healthcare system. We believe in what we call correct by construction medicine, where instead of first doing and then trying to remember what you've done and then document it, follow the best practices to begin with and let the AI document it for you. So that's in a nutshell.
And that's an important part for people to realize is that, a lot of this design is the more successful programs that we're seeing is empathetic. So folks like yourself who've actually built product and scaled it in the past understand that it's really about the customer journey. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing with wearable technologies and how they're redefining the way individuals track and manage their health situations on a daily basis.
So I'll maybe give our perspective. So the way we interfere with the flow is we've created a copilot that sits inside in the electronic health record, like Epic, and allows the physician to manage care more effectively by reading all the data coming in from the physician, from their medical history of the patient, and then translate that using multiple AI agents to relevant differentials, and then to recommend the workup and eventually document it, right? So within that setup, right, in the ED, we see a huge premise in getting all the data that is collected now by wearables and use that as an input to the flow, right? That, can be consumed, basically can be considered or should be considered as your personal medical history that should be augmented into this decision thought process and be automated. And we believe that what we are doing in automating this process really allows us to leverage what we do also in world of wearables.
And that's a big part of what we're seeing across the ecosystem with wearables as well. So tell us a little bit more about where that's taking you and your company relative to sensors and AI. You guys are one of the fastest adopted AI technologies that we're seeing right now in the health system, and how this is helping you and your company with data analytics and making wearables more impactful in the clinical journey for the physician.
So, as you mentioned, right, luckily for everyone, I believe now the adoption of AI technology becomes easier, right? It's like a shelf product. And we are now adjusting our underlying technology to basically host what everyone now calls agentic AI, right? That allows you to really take a set of AI agents and train them and allow them to adjust and adopt this new input of data that comes in and then feed it into the clinical workflow. We actually just launched our product in the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester, and we hope later early next year to do it the same thing in Arizona. And what we are seeing is, again, our ability to take data that up until now was kind of like need to be manually processed by the physician and then digested and translated into action being done much more automatically. And of course, wearables can be part of that.
Yeah, that's spot on. And I think, what we see in these studies that we're doing and the types of evidence that we're gathering and aggregating is this idea of really not seeing as many AI type technologies being able to pull that data in yet. So the fact that you're doing that is really a tribute to you and your technical team. And one of the things that we see working well in very few institutions, but it is happening, is this idea around how healthcare providers and physicians can work together with tech innovators like yourself to help ensure that wearable data is actually translating into actionable insights for patients with this kind of physician opportunity working together, physicians working with patients and getting that data. How are you guys putting that together? What are you guys doing to make sure that happens?
So I think we've been privileged to collaborate closely with the Medical University of South Carolina, sponsored by the Chief Innovation Officer and leaders from the emergency department, and working closely with them to understand, again, what's the best way for clinicians to interact with those tools, what are the challenges today, and how we can improve their interaction, their ability to augment data, and then translate that into action into the workflow. And I think the key here is really having very close interaction with your end customers, as you mentioned earlier, to do the right thing.
Yeah, and that's a huge component of what we're seeing is that these things, as much as people are doing it, there's still a lot of challenges, right? One of them is things like privacy. Another one is interoperability, which, again, hats off to you guys in being able to work together with the hospital and with Epic and the leadership to show that what you're doing is absolutely by the nines in terms of interoperability and user adoption. How are you meeting these challenges? You guys are doing something a lot of people are really struggling with in terms of working with hospital CIOs, their privacy officers, Epic, and that sort of thing. What are you guys doing to be able to meet these challenges?
I don't want to share all my secrets here, but I would say that I think the key is really identifying the right players in the healthcare system. And then I also I would say, give credit to Nordic consultants we've been working with and help us understand really how EHR integration really works, and then get the right sponsors from the hospital leadership, both on the innovation part and the IP part and the medical part, and really help us close the right loops to get everyone to collaborate together. And we have now seen it again with Mayo, which is really an outstanding organization that knows how to bring all the different people together to the same table. And we are now working in progress to integrate into the Mayo platform. If people are familiar with that, it will actually allow us to take that and scale that to other healthcare systems as part of Mayo.
Amazing. And I mean, part of what you've done here is you've been able to capture what's happening in the future already today. What kind of things do you see happening in the future now with agentic AI and a lot of the other things that are happening with AI and certainly wearables and how AI will help wearables in the future? What are some of the things that you're seeing that we should be paying attention to in the future?
I think that if you look at, there's always this, I would say, discrepancy or disappointment from the fast pace of the core technology like AI and how quickly you can actually apply it into your real life in an effective manner, right? Something beyond just generating weird images, right? And of course, you have these mammoths like healthcare systems and institutions that are used to move very, very slow and suddenly a very rapid evolution. So how you bridge that and bring it, effectively into the table. And what we've realized kind of partly by design is that our ability to integrate into the clinical workflow inside Epic now allows us to harness those multiple AI agents and become kind of a bridge, right, that allows the technology to move faster, and we can take it and harness it as applicable and tie it into the clinical workflow, right? And I think that's what we are already doing, and we can probably, of course, extend and accelerate. So if you want to fast forward into the future, what we are really seeing is we can take, I mean, the whole point here, and you alluded to it earlier, is how you help clinicians make data-driven decisions in real time in a way that integrate seamlessly into the workflow. Today, what physician needs to do, they need to look at the data, open evidence or up to date or ChatGPT, put it there, get an answer. You're not sure what the answer is if it's not an hallucination, feed it back, right? You want all that to be integrated and to be aligned with the best practices of the healthcare system. So you want to harness it, not at being the physician as the mediator for this, but to put the physician in the center and let all this technology, right, empower him to make the right decisions in an efficient way, and then, of course, to document that. And of course, wearables become a huge, part of that, because then a patient comes in, his data comes in with him, it feeds into the flow, right? Not to mention the fact that, when you think about the follow-ups, right? You can give it as an input to the wearables, right? To track the behavior of the patient when he goes out, and again, vice versa, right? So you can have this continuous loop of data-driven clinical care delivery, if it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And when you're working with US healthcare systems executives and you're building these integrations, there's a lot involved. Everything from where the data sits and who's in what cloud and how much of your AI is in their cloud, et cetera. What are some of the elements of success that are critical for AI engineers to understand as they're building and working with C-suite executives and hospital systems in order to make things work properly? How would you recommend? What would you recommend to people to make sure they're focusing on?
So I would say you have like privacy, security, right? And that's from the IT department. And then I would say explainability for the end user, right? Because you don't want your data to get lost. You want to make sure that your integration with the healthcare system is fully secured, but also you want to make sure that whenever you give recommendations, they're fully explainable and not coming from just, some sort of hallucination of some data pool that you're not really aware of, right? So I would say these are the concerns, and I think if you take them into consideration in your baseline architecture to, from the get-go, then it's much easier, because at the end of the day, you need to convince the CISO, right, that what you're doing is extremely safe, right? And it's not so much about all these, certifications that you can come in with, but really how to build a bulletproof architecture that really knows to isolate the important data from the, PHI and put those apart, right? So everyone will feel comfortable with what you're doing, and you'll still be able to provide, again, explanations to the end user of what you've done, if it makes sense.
Yep, makes a ton of sense. And just really impressed with all the work you guys are doing, and super amounts of congratulations to you and your team for being able to crack the code, work with hospital systems in a very collaborative manner to help improve the use of AI and really accelerate the use of AI in hospital systems and electronic health record systems. So well done to you, and well done to all that you're doing with wearables, and looking forward to seeing you again at the summit in December in New York City. Take care, Shlomi. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
That's fantastic. And just if you guys want to connect with Shlomi again, his LinkedIn is in the chat. And again, if you have any questions for me, let me know on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn now taking questions, and any ideas for future symposia as well. And any evidence that you are seeing that you think needs to be driven into the ecosystem more rigorously to make sure that buyers with over $1 million in budgets and investors with over 5 million in investments can actually help support these really strong digital health technologies. And if there's a digital health technology that you're not seeing in our programming, in our publications, in our newsletters, et cetera, let me know right away. We want to find these companies. We want to make sure that they're getting to the proper buyers and the proper investors as soon as possible to optimize the adoption of digital technologies. So next up, we are really happy to have join with us someone from Europe who has invented a novel device to help improve heart monitoring and heart attack detection. Vlasto, welcome to the program.
Hello, hi. Thanks for having me here.
Well, of course, really good to see you. If you could just start with a short piece about who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, so we are a Czech startup founded in 2022 in the Czech Republic. We are doing long-term remote ECG or EKG monitoring and detecting of the heart arrhythmias. When the heart arrhythmias are not catched in an early stage, it can lead to the stroke, heart failure, or early onset of dementia. So we are actually providing a system or solution to the people that they can monitor anytime, anywhere, as long as they need, and the results are professionally evaluated and sent to the doctors and hospitals.
Amazing. And what led you to develop this novel technology?
It's actually personal experience. One of our co-founder is a cardiac patient. One of our co-founders is professor of cardiology. Me myself, I had problems with the heart arrhythmias earlier, so we were just thinking about the way how to not wear a halter, which is currently the golden standard in the hospitals, but it's really a device which is limiting your activities, and it's for a very short time only, so the detection rate is 5 to 7% based on the clinical studies. So it's pretty low. So we were thinking about in the 21st century, there should be something which can do a long-term monitoring. And I'm not talking about 1 or 2 weeks. I'm talking about 3, 6, 12 months of monitoring, which is non-invasive and which is not limiting your daily activities and your daily routine. So it came from a real need, actually, and it was designed partially by the cardiologist.
That's the way to do it, right? It's all about that empathy-driven design and really making sure that those people that are using the technology are there designing it with you. And again, you are a great example of how AI is transforming wearable technologies. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in the field of AI when it comes to wearable technologies and how you're seeing it change the way we monitor and manage cardiovascular health.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So we are generally combining the software and the hardware. So it's a wearable, so it's a chest belt plus the mobile application. We developed actually two AIs. One AI is evaluating the ECG or EKG signal and giving you the information about the type of arrhythmia, if the heart arrhythmia was detected. Another AI is removing the artifacts and noise from the measurement that the doctors are actually not misled or mislead to the wrong decision. We combine the hardware, which you can actually wear anytime, anywhere. So it's a fitness chest belt. So you can do gym. It's waterproof. You can wear it overnight. Generally, after each measurement, if you stop the measurement, it automatically sends all the data to the cloud. It evaluates the data, and in 5 minutes, your cardiologist or your doctor have the results in his system. And you, as a patient or user, will get as well a report about if heart arrhythmias were detected and what type of arrhythmias were detected. It's in a way of semaphore. So green means nothing was detected, everything, the heart works correctly. Yellow is mild arrhythmias, not life-threatening, but if it's too often, you should definitely discuss it with your cardiologist. And the dark orange is we found a critical arrhythmia, and you should definitely visit the cardiologist as soon as possible. Actually, the regulator did not allow us to put there the red one, not to scare people, but generally the dark orange means we found something serious. We give you the type of the arrhythmia, what it is, why it came, what are the risks, and what you should do next. So yeah, so we created this whole system. We added to it as well the environment for the doctors, that the doctor can see all your measurements, the history. I think that's one of the most valuable thing on it, that the doctor don't see just the isolated measurements from, for example, Holter or 14 days patch, which is available on the market, but they see the history in time, so they can see 12 months results of your measurements. They can see the how the arrhythmias are evolving, how the medication works. So in Czech Republic, generally it's used for the four type of situation. One is prevention. Of course, one is on the patients and the long-term monitoring and see if the medication works. The third one is post-ablation or post-surgery monitoring, because we know that the heart arrhythmias are coming back in 40% of the cases, and it depends only about the time when it came back. And one big example or study is in neurology, patients after ischemic stroke. Actually, after ischemic stroke, you should have some device for monitoring. And if there is an occasion of arterial fibrillation after ischemic stroke, it's a critical case because it leads or it's correlating with the second ischemic stroke, which is in half of the cases deadly. So the AI or the combination of the hardware, software, AI, and all these systems can actually save lives. And that's what we are actually doing, saving lives in Czech Republic. In the last couple of months, it was 300 people who we actually saved lives. So yeah.
Amazing, absolutely amazing, and congratulations on that. It's not every day that a technology company can talk about saving 300 lives in a given month, and that's an amazing statistic. And I think part of that, it seems to be from what we've studied about your platform, is this unique ability that you guys have put together and taking wearable data, mixing it with AI, and using AI to really empower it and bring it to life, if you will, and then also integrated into the clinical workflow. And we've talked a little bit about that with our last guest from Israel, Shlomi Otzel, and from QIMD, and how that's important is to integrate nicely into the medical workflow. Talk a little bit about that. And it sounds like, even from what you said in your introduction, that you were working with physicians. So a lot of this was designed by physicians for physicians, which is great. Talk a little bit more about that and how and what you've done to make sure it's integrated in the clinical workflow.
Yeah, so because the product came from a real need, so we all went through a standard flow where you feel something that is not working correctly, you go to the physician, they recommend you to have a Holter, then you go for a Holter, you have it home for 24 hours or 72 hours, then you send it back. Actually, you're waiting for the results, and then actually the cardiologist or the physician will tell you the result of the one-day screening. In most of the cases, whatever you felt on the beginning, it's gone during the measurement because the arrhythmias are coming unpredictably. So this whole process in Europe, in general cases, can take like 3 to 4 weeks from the day you have an issue to the day you get the result of one-day screening. So generally, the lead time or the whole workflow is pretty long. So what we wanted to actually create is something which you will have at home. You, as a patient or user, will own the device. Whenever you feel something, because 50% of the patients are symptomatic, you just put the belt on, start measuring, and most probably you will catch it. And you don't need to wait for any evaluation. You don't need to send the data anywhere. It automatically goes, the evaluated data, to your physician. And if there is a detection of the critical heart arrhythmia, it will even alert the physician that you as a patient or user got detected, and the physician will get the link directly to that measurement with the finding. So we pretty much shorten the time between the point when you felt something or when you think something is happening till the decision of the doctor. And it's pretty significant decrease of this time from a couple of weeks to a couple of minutes, which sometimes can be important in terms of like the next steps of the physician. So that's how we do it. The journey was not so easy because, as you mentioned, we done the certification in European Union. I must say that the European certifications, the Europe is over-regulated, I would say, in this easy way. And it took us more than 3 years to go through all the certification. I'm not saying that the process is wrong. Of course, we need to verify and confirm during the clinical studies that everything is validated and it works correctly. It's just that the process is too long. So for a startup company or innovators to create something, then 3 years to wait for certification. And then you talked about it with your previous guest about how to put it into the clinical reality or into the hospitals. It's a pretty long time. So yeah, we're happy that we survived this, and now we're in the stage of actually implementing the solutions in the hospitals across the Europe. And thanks for having me, because we are also looking for the US market in the next year or next 2 years.
Well, look, I think, when it comes to heart attacks, the US market is one of the leaders. And I think we need as many new platforms and novel devices and novel AI as possible in this country. So we really appreciate that you and your team are making the effort to bring the technology to the US to help US patients as well. And I think one of the things that you're doing is you're really pushing the envelope with AI and AI-driven wearables in the US healthcare system. What are some of the main challenges that you've seen in adopting AI and making sure that the wearable that you're developing has the best and the latest AI built inside it?
Yeah, so we developed the model from scratch. Actually, we developed the model with a couple of cardiologists which were annotating actually the results and the measured ECGs as well. During the certification, it was compared to the database of ECG measurements and evaluation and the results. So even the hardware, even the software, the AI went through like detailed testing. We done multiple clinical studies. The last clinical study was in 2 university hospitals. The sensitivity of the solution is 98%. So it means when we say it's arrhythmia, it's almost 100% sure that it is an arrhythmia and the type is correct. The overall accuracy of the solution is 94%. The feedback from the patients in the clinical studies about wearing it long term was pretty amazing. These all things are helping us to actually confirm and confirm that the solution is working correctly. Currently, we are available on 15% of all cardiologists in Czech Republic. We are in first more than 40 hospitals in Czech Republic, and we expanded in 3 new European countries during October. So this is for us also the confirmation that the system and the solution which we created works, and it can really bring an added value to the current system. But yeah, it went through multiple clinical studies, multiple testing, and the whole process was takes 3 years. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, Vlasto, thank you so much for joining us today, and congratulations on building such a novel, relevant, and mission-critical product for not just Europe, but also the United States and the rest of the world when it comes to heart attack detection, heart attack prediction, et cetera. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much for having me, and have a good rest of the day.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
So you heard it here first, folks. Keep an eye on Cardi AI. It's a novel and unique and extraordinarily important heart attack monitoring technology and detection and prediction technology. So yet to be tested for prediction, but just keep an eye on that in the US at least. And so one thing you should absolutely keep an eye on is the HITLAB Innovator Summit. As you know, each semester, at the end of each semester on a semi-annual basis, the first week of May, the first week of December, the HITLAB community comes together and reviews all evidence, not just evidence that is being published for the first time, but for evidence that's being published secondarily as well, so that investors and buyers and government executives and academics can review, and startups can review what's working in healthcare when it comes to digital and what's not working. And the summit is that digital health evidence review that you all look forward to. And we want speakers. We've got late breakers happening over the next 2 weeks. So if you have any evidence of a technology that's working, that's being adopted, please do apply. Please do submit your research, your evidence. It could have been already published in another journal. It could be already presented at another conference. We don't care about being the first. We just want the best. And so again, HITLAB is that evidence generation and aggregation community helping find and test and promote the best technologies in digital and in healthcare. So if you could let people know if you know of a good technology or of a good entrepreneur that's building a good technology, or maybe it's an entrepreneurial effort as well within a big company, make sure they go to hitlab.org, get involved, speak, and get the evidence submitted for the summit December 2, 3, and 4, and hope to see you there. Next up, we have on our plate the Amy West, HITLAB's own Amy West, who is the principal of advisory services and the chair for the Women's Health Tech Initiative. And she will be interviewing Chrysanthi Dori, who's vice president of clinical informatics with metadata and the chair of the Center for AI Testing and Evidence. Really looking forward to hearing from these brilliant and extraordinary people and handing it over to Amy. Amy, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Always happy to be here at the monthly symposia, and very excited to be here with Chrysanthi Dori. Again, she is the Vice President of Clinical Informatics Services at Metadata, and we're going to be talking about AI in clinical research, enhancing insights and driving innovation. Chrysanthi, before I jump in, anything you wanted to share about your background?
Yes, actually, it's a pleasure for me being here, and it's a pleasure of chairing, being the chairwoman of CATE. And the way I see my role, it's always, my role had been sitting at the confluence of emerging AI technologies, digital health infrastructure, and global healthcare transformation. And my core responsibility at CATE is strategic leadership, making sure that the group's actions align with the organization's long-term goals and collaborate with the leadership to meet those goals, representing the group and serving as the spokesperson and advocate for CATE's interests. So pleasure to be here, Amy, with you today one more time.
Well, we love having you as a part of our community here at HITLAB, so it's great to see you again. So to jump into our topic, can you speak a little bit about how AI it's currently being applied to enhance data analysis and insights in the clinical research space?
Absolutely. So AI, the way I see it, it's being applied across the research life cycle, transforming data analysis from hypothesis generation to real-time clinical prognostics. Let's take as an example the area of drug discovery and molecular analysis. We'll see there that AI models now, they are functioning as a biological discovery engine capable of generating novel cancer hypotheses that can be later validated in living cells. So we can see that AI streamlines now the R&D process from the molecular analysis to clinical testing, and it helps predict protein structures and drug target interactions. AI is also used to identify promising therapeutic opportunities, disease subtypes, patient stratification, and it does this by integrating data from genes, from proteins, and metabolic pathways. The other facet is pharmacovigilance and safety monitoring. We see that AI is moving into the operational side of drug safety by automating pharmacovigilance tasks, which means adverse drug event detection, case processing, signal detection, regulatory reporting, you name it. And it claims efficiency improvements up to 90% faster regulatory reporting. Then we have the prognostic prediction, where the AI probabilistic models, they can enhance diagnostic precision by predicting clinical outcomes in high-risk patients. We see this externally validated AI models to be able to predict mortality and prolonged ICU length of stay among critically ill post-operative patients. And we see it, of course, in the advanced diagnostic and imaging. We see that AI is redefining now radiology based on pattern recognition, assisting in detecting abnormalities which are not visible to the human eye, automating tumor segmentation and mapping tissue changes over time.
That's pretty amazing and mind-blowing in a lot of ways. It's really incredible what's happening in this space. Could you just share what are the key opportunities for AI to improve trial efficiency and patient outcomes? Because that's another, clinical trials take so long and there's so many things that could go wrong. How can AI help to prevent some of those things?
That's a very good question. It actually significantly accelerates clinical trials. It has the capacity to improve operational efficiency and drive better clinical results for patients. And that can be achieved by accelerating drug R&D. So, for example, we see AI simulations that can reduce R&D timelines and failure rates, accelerating drug discovery in the fields such as oncology, and enable faster time to market for new treatments. It also can optimize clinical trial workflows. We can see that it can enhance trial design. How does it do that? By analyzing historical data and real-time patient data, and dynamically adjust parameters and improve patient segmentation. And this has the potentiality of enabling smarter, faster, and more inclusive clinical trials. We also can see it on the patient recruitment within the clinical trial territory, where we can see AI-driven tools that they can optimize patient recruitment and clinical trial site selection. And the objectives are set to reduce trial recruitment time by 30%. And then we see it in the area of trial monitoring, where it has the capability for real-time monitoring of trial data for protocol deviations and enables decentralized clinical trials that improve diversity and participation remotely. And then it is by enhancing clinical efficiency and safety, we see that they can flag clinical deterioration early, automate management workflows. This can contribute to substantial clinical impact, such as saving lives, reducing ICU transfers, shortening hospital stays, as it is already demonstrated in acute care settings. And of course, it enables what? Personalized medicine. AI is advancing the development of personalized health. We hear a lot about digital twins, which is nothing else but personal physiological models that can combine biometric and wearable data. And these systems can simulate patient responses to medication and predict disease progression.
That's really exciting. And, a lot of the efficiencies around, broader outreach, or I guess identification of more diverse potential participants, getting them into the trials faster, that all goes toward, getting to the conclusion faster and hopefully getting more of these life-saving drugs into market more quickly. So that's really an exciting area of opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot of really good things and opportunities that we have with AI in this space, but obviously there are also challenges. So from a safety and regulatory perspective, what challenges does AI introduce in clinical trials and in the clinical settings?
These challenges actually gave birth to Kate, right? The Center of AI Testing and Evidence, because the challenges that we see in clinical trials, it is around specific safety, ethical, and regulatory risks that are very different than the traditional medical devices and drugs. So the area of regulatory ambiguity and fragmentation, where we see that the adoption of AI is often very slowly moving by regulatory because there is uncertainty and there are unclear validation pathways. So standards are currently emerging, but they're fragmented. And AI is moving in a very fast-paced implementation, and it is driving a drastic increase in legal and regulatory requirements globally. And then we see the model instability and drift in AI systems, especially those where continuous learning capabilities may drift or change over time after deployment. This reliance on these AI models on context-sensitive data means that the risk profile of AI is distinct from classic medical devices, and standard biomedical trials are often insufficient to ensure safe deployment. So there are concerns that had been raised about the reliability of AI interpretations, particularly concerning biometric data, like, for example, sleep tracking. Then there is a bias and health inequity. AI models inherit biases from what? The training data, which can lead to actually unfair and discriminatory decisions. And this is a critical challenge in our industry, as there are performance gaps of approximately 30% observed in minority populations. So if we don't check that over time regarding data, we can have biased AI reinforcing health inequities, especially in areas like women's health, where representation gaps are common. And I think you have a lot to say there, Amy.
And I was just gonna no, go ahead. But I agree. I mean, when you think about that, the importance of making sure that the data is unbiased. I mean, women are at a disadvantage as well. So, but go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think it's an important.
No. I wanted you to chime in because I know you run the Women's Health Initiative, and that's very important. The other is the explainability of those, because there is a lack of transparency, making it difficult to interpret confidence levels and explain decisions to stakeholders that are not technical. And of course, security and privacy risks. There are risks that includes compromise of privacy by the possibility of obtaining or leaking or incorrectly inferring sensitive information, or re-identification of the identified or anonymized data, and accountability and oversight.
That's great. And you mentioned Kate, and we're about at time here, but Kate is really the outcome of some of the challenge areas of AI as it relates to the healthcare space and the digital health space. Can you talk a little bit about Kate how it's standing up and how it's there to help guide the integration of AI tools into clinical research and the real world practice? And how is Kate operating in that world?
Great question. Kate was born to be able to solve most of these challenges, and it is designed to guide the safe and effective integration of AI tools by establishing trust and standardizing evidence generation and accelerating regulatory alignment. So Kate guides us towards integration through various mechanisms. One of them is the standardized validation framework that Kate employs, which is a rigorous multidimensional testing framework that requires every AI system to be evaluated across the core pillars, providing clear standards for integration and deployment regarding efficacy and clinical validation, safety and risk assessment, because we ensure that systems do not cause harm, equity and bias mitigation, where we mandate comprehensive equity audits to ensure consistent performance across diverse population, clustered by race, gender, age, transparency and explainability, It requires all the AI decisions to be interpretable by clinicians and patients, setting a target of a clinician agreement in the AI rationale. Then it is the regulatory compliance. We map AI features to guidelines like the FDA SAMD to target an approval time, much less than the regular time for designations like the FDA breakthrough device. We verify consistent performance across different clinical settings, and we accelerate adoption and de-risking. So this shortens the timeline of AI solutions from years to a much smaller turnaround time, which translates to ROI, significant ROI. And we do real-world monitoring and training. So CAGE framework requires continuous post-deployment surveillance and real-world performance tracking to address all the above, model drift and unintended consequences. So I hope this answers your question, Amy.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And obviously much needed in this space as we still continue to learn. But really appreciate your time, Chrysanthi, and your perspective on AI, the opportunities and also some of the challenges and watchouts that we have with clinical research, and then highlighting, why HITLAB and in partnership with you established Kate to really help move us forward through some of the challenge areas. But thank you again, Chrysanthi. It's always so lovely to talk with you. And again, Chrysanthi is the Vice President of Clinical Informatics Services at Metadata, and always enjoy talking with her. And thanks so much for your perspective and your expertise in this space.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And up next, I have the pleasure of getting to speak again with Elise King, who is the Managing Director of AHA Ventures and at the American Heart Association. We're going to be talking about wearables and women's health opportunities in innovation and investment. Elise, would love to welcome you. And before we jump in, wanted to just see if there was anything else you wanted to share about your background in the work that you're doing.
Hi, Amy. Thanks so much for having me, and great to see everyone today. I'm happy to share a tiny bit about my background. I came into venture from being a founder and then working in venture studios. So I started my career at Oxygen Partners in Town Hall Ventures, which is exclusively in healthcare tech and services. Then I moved to Human Ventures to work with founders in the venture studio to launch their healthcare companies, as well as future work companies in other sectors. And then I joined the American Heart Association about a year ago to launch this new Series A and Series B fund. We invest in companies that have clinical solutions for women's heart health and women's brain health, but lots of things roll up to women's heart health and brain health. So while we're looking at some of the obvious things like dementia and different types of heart failure, we're also looking at autoimmune, mental health, healthy pregnancy, lots of different things. So thanks for having me.
Fantastic. And I always really appreciate a focus of women's health on heart health, because it is the #1 killer of women.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes when we think about women's health, it tends to be in the reproductive health space. So the work you're doing is critically important, and appreciate, the work and the effort that you do there. And thanks for being here. So as we jump in, would love to get your perspective on how are consumer-facing and provider-facing wearable technology shaping the future of women's health?
It's a great question. I think let me start quickly by looking to the history of it here. I was a history major, so I love to look backwards. But consumer-facing and provider-facing wearables were crucial in even launching women's health, right? If you look back at wearables and specifically tracking, right, it was the rise of smartphones, and women were finally using trackers to do, period tracking, fertility tracking. Ida Tin, who was the founder of Clue in 2012, coined the term femtech in 2013, because all these things were starting, right? So the consumer wearables and the consumer trackers specifically were crucial in just launching the industry and showing that there was appetite. Looking into the future, I think wearables are so powerful because they're giving women data to bring to their providers. As we know, women were not included in clinical trials, well, re-included in clinical trials until 1993. So there's so much we don't know about women's bodies, whether it be traditional areas like gynecology, obstetrics, fertility, or these sex-based differences, like you just mentioned, in cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
But now women can go and they can show their provider, holding up my phone, right? Like, here's the data, here's what's happening. I think it's big too, because culturally, sadly, right, women are often dismissed in healthcare, right? And dismissed in other parts of the world. They are told, it's probably all in your head, why don't you go talk to somebody, right? But with wearables, you can go and say, here's the evidence, this is what's happening. And that's just so powerful from like a psychographic perspective, right? And the behavior change that that brings.
Agree 100%. And I love all the points that you just raised, because they've been around for a long time and they still exist today. But hopefully with this type of insight, we can start to move beyond that. But so what wearable applications or conditions are particularly relevant for women, and where do you see the greatest potential impact?
Sure. We really divide the world and kind of see the world as McKinsey does in terms of women's health, of conditions that affect women differently, disproportionately, or distinctly. They're the ones that kind of came out with that. So I think there are wearables that can affect women distinctly and disproportionately. I think I'll lean into differently here a little bit. I think in the conditions that affect women differently, cardiovascular disease being one of them, again, the science is still being discovered, right? We're still trying to figure out what are the sex-based differences. And so it's really helpful for women to kind of go in and bring that data. An example is something like Zeopatch, which is made by iRhythm. It's a heart monitoring patch. Heart attacks look very different in women. And so when women present to the ER or to their doctor, they have these different symptoms, such as nausea, right? Which doesn't automatically clue heart attack. And so when you have some of those wearables, the doctor can see what has happened when you're presenting differently with symptoms. So I think I'll lean there for now.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I think it's, again, like if you're the physician and you're thinking about the protocols around diagnosing a heart attack and nausea is not on the list, it just goes unnoticed. So it's a real challenge. So obviously payment reimbursement can be a pain point in the healthcare space, whether it's digital or not digital. How do these types of payment and reimbursement models influence the adoption of wearable health tech for women?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. I see even in the comments, right? Someone has commented like, wearables are for the rich. And I think like historically this has been the case, right? And I think a lot of companies are doing things to change that. Reimbursement and payment influences consumers hugely, but they also influence investors. And I'll go into that a little bit too. Access and affordability are key. And it's one amazing thing about joining the American Heart Association is that it's really about accessibility, whether that's in rural communities, whether that's in, women, whether that's in ethnic minorities. Like, they really want to bring clinical practice to all people, and strong clinical practice to all people. So for me to even invest in something, there has to be a strong access case there. We have to remember too, right, that all patients are consumers, and consumers living in this economy who are price sensitive, right? People are doing all sorts of ways to save money right now. And so if you go to Abbott, right, you can get a Freestyle Libre for free because they need people to adopt it, right? And so even the med tech companies are trying to create creative solutions, whether it's rebates or free programs, just to get usage. On the investor side, though, I mean, I will be honest that sometimes the payment and reimbursement for remote patient monitoring and sometimes remote therapeutic monitoring aren't great for the device companies, right? A lot of these, the provider is being reimbursed, and then they're passing that reimbursement on to the med device provider. But we're talking about like $14, $15 per patient per month here, right? And so if you want to build that to a $100 million company, you need over 500,000 patients to use your device. And so I do think sometimes with remote patient monitoring and remote therapeutic monitoring, it can be hard to back as an investor in terms of like getting to those exit multiples that you need.
Yeah, and I just think it's something that, the audience here needs to keep in mind as, you're innovating in the space. It's so important that we continue to do that, but making sure that, there is a payment and that, there's someone's willing to pay for it in the background and it makes sense because unfortunately that is very much tied into moving these innovations forward. So from a venture and healthcare investing perspective, what trends are you seeing in the wearable health technology when wearable health technology and women-focused innovation?
Yeah, for sure. So many things. I think I'll start with two areas, one being migraine. This is top of mind because we actually have a portfolio company called Neura. They're a teleneurology company, but they've built a really robust migraine recording journal to help people identify triggers and prevent future attacks. And so again, like, while they don't necessarily have a wearable, right, like the tracking you can do with that is really important. Or I've also seen in the migraine space, there's a company called Otolith, and they have a new medical device that's a headband you can put on when you have a migraine attack, right? So you don't end up in the ER or urgent care. Those are both overutilized in that space as a new device kind of coming to market to help there. I'm also seeing a lot in healthy pregnancy. At my fund, we're more focused on the risks to the mom than the risks to the baby in pregnancy, just as a women's health fund. But a lot of companies now are equipping moms with blood pressure cuffs or other monitors to monitor things like preeclampsia, prevent preterm birth, et cetera. So I'm seeing a lot there and kind of ways to care extend outside the four walls.
Very interesting. It's always good to understand where that trend and focus is, particularly in women's health, because there are so many areas of opportunity. So, again, speaking to the audience today, we have a lot of innovators in the space and startups. We talked a little bit about the payment model considerations, but what advice would you give to them, to those who are looking to create a wearable that addresses women's health needs?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm mostly going to draw on, I'm going to draw a half on my like venture studio experience and just launching pre-seed and seed stage companies with founders, and half on my Series A, B experience now. I think one is, the potential to expand your definition of women's health, right? I think something we're just seeing in the market with some of the big players like the Mavens and the Tias and the Carrots, right? Like sometimes that market is still considered niche because there hasn't been the IPO yet, there hasn't been the M&A yet. And so if you can broaden your definition of women's health or healthcare for women, I think that can be helpful. Two is really setting up the clinical infrastructure. Yes, this takes time and money, which is hard to do when you're raising that pre-seed or seed stage round. But eventually that clinical validation helps you with revenue long-term, because women and all people are sold a lot of snake oil in healthcare, right? And so something that's like evidence-based and there's science behind your product, then you can get providers to buy in as well as consumers to buy in. I think two more things are, and this actually relates to one of those questions as well around kind of the tech bros adopting versus women adopting. I think historically, we have seen the tech bros who like want all the graphs and the data adopting things quickly. But something I really learned actually specifically from Priyanka Jain at Evie, where Human was an investor, is not to just provide women with the data. We're all in a data overload, but provide women and all people with actionable data, right? Like, because it says this is what you need to do. And then also connect the dots with their providers, right? If you get this information, if you get this bad news, then who do you turn to, right? If like the clinical piping is not there, that person is still ending up in an ER or urgent care and like you haven't actually helped anything. So provide people with actionable data. And then again, I used to see this all the time in my venture studio life of who will really buy your wearable or your product or your service urgently, right? I see a lot of wearables that it's a nice to have of like, oh, you probably want to track this and you probably want to track that. But like, that's an assumption, right? Who really needs this? And then run the experiments. How can you prove that people want your wearable urgently? Is it through the waitlist orders? Is it through focus groups? Like, where is that urgency? Because that's what drives repeatable revenue.
Yeah, those are excellent points and great advisement to the startup world, whether it's women's health or really any
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
But they are critical, and they seem like they should be simple things, but they're not.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you sharing your perspective and the work that you're doing. It's really, really important and very informationally actionable for this group here. So thank you so much for your time, Elise.
Sure.
We would love to have you back and speak again, and share what's next, in a few months or, over a period of time in women's health tech. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Super. And what a great couple of interviews. Thank you, Amy West, for taking us through those sessions and really diving into some of the nuances around the digital technology adoption within women's health. And again, if anyone is interested in joining the Women's Health Tech Initiative, feel free to message me on LinkedIn or contact us at contact@hitlab.org, and we will get you in touch with Amy or one of the Women's Health Tech coordinators and get you enrolled and onboarded right away. Really appreciate everyone's support there, and certainly looking forward to what's next with Women's Health Tech in 2026. As you can see, a lot of phenomenal ambassadors in the Women's Health Tech Initiative, and a lot of people that are really working hard to make sure that these pieces come together and that these technologies are going to be more important than ever to get going. The next up, we have Lee Shapiro from 7Wire Venture, one of the most successful venture capital companies in healthcare and life sciences. In the meantime, we're going to do a quick poll while Lee gets set up in the green room and is ready to join. We'd like to ask you all, what do you primarily use as your wearable technology? So what do you primarily use wearable for today in healthcare, life sciences? Are you wearing an Apple Watch? Are you wearing an Oura Ring? Or are you wearing something else, a patch, a CGM device? There's hundreds and hundreds of devices, over 1,000 now, that are available in the US market. And we know that as a part of the HITLAB community, you are the folks that are leading the charge in terms of utilizing wearables. Some of you are probably studying them in your departments in academic medicine. Some of you are building them, and so you're looking and wearing others to see how to design a product from a user-centric standpoint. And certainly many of you are finding ways to invest in them. Now, we have investors on the program right now that are watching, and certainly buyers. And whether you're from a physician's office trying to understand how to incorporate it into your electronic health record, or a health plan or a hospital system trying to understand how to lead population health efforts, and then obviously life sciences to improve the data collection and the overall understanding of medication effects and utilization that way as well. And we have our results. They are in, and it looks like fitness tracking is the clear, far and away leader, taking 54%. Sleep monitoring is at about 17%, and then heart rate and stress management are 5% and 5% respectively. Other, which is a substantial category, 20%, is other. That'll be interesting. We should talk more about that too. If you can drop me a line and let me know, for those of you who answered other, what some of the other wearables that you're wearing, that would be phenomenal. I'm assuming some of them would be CGM and things like that as well. Well, super. Really looking forward to diving into that data. And next up, we have Lee Shapiro from 7Wire Ventures. And again, most of you should know. If you don't know Lee Shapiro, again, I would absolutely ask you to jump onto Google and jump onto YouTube and find out as much as you can, as he is one of the foremost investors and unicorn makers in digital health over the last 40 years. Lee, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
Stan, great to see you. And thanks so much for having me on today.
Of course. Now, really appreciate your time. I know how busy you are. And let's jump into it. I mean, really, just from a venture perspective, what makes wearable or digital health startups and these kinds of technologies particularly investable today?
Well, I think it's less about the wearable or the technology per se, Stan. What you have to do is kind of place it in context. You've seen some of the companies in the space like Aura have grown dramatically. They had an announced round that, valued them in the multiple billions just recently. And I think part of the reason for that is because the ability to use that information, to integrate that information in ways that help you address certain health needs is becoming more available, more accessible to people, and useful. When we think about a wearable device, we think about it in terms of how can the data that's being captured influence the trajectory of health. And to the extent that there's a way to integrate that information and use it in the context of providing individuals with that type of guidance that they need in order to better manage their healthcare needs. You had talked about a CGM as an example for those individuals with diabetes. That's become a very important tool in their arsenal and how they can better manage their health. So we think about it as that companion that provides you insights into your body's vital narrative that allows you to better manage health, hopefully towards better outcomes and therefore lower costs.
Yeah, and that's really where it comes down to, is really democratizing a lot of healthcare so that folks that are able to start generating their own healthcare records, whether it's wearables or blood tests, genetic tests. Now the patient is more empowered than ever. I know you guys are leading that charge with one of the most active and most impressive, most successful venture funds that are focused on patients. How do you evaluate the impact of consumer facing and patient facing versus provider facing, physician facing wearables when you guys are looking at making investments and doing this?
So Stan, we subscribe to a thesis that was developed by the late, great Professor Clayton Christensen from Harvard called jobs to be done theory. And we have taken a spin on that inside of 7Wire that we call consumer hassle mapping. So what we're trying to understand is what are the barriers, the friction, if you will, that people are facing in their lives in terms of addressing a given health need. This is a lot of low-hanging fruit in this area, as you know. There's a lot of challenges that all of us face in getting to the health status that we want. But we'll look at a wearable in the context of saying, do people need another device to measure their steps? Probably not, right? But is there something that we're able to give them now that is providing them with better insights? So if you have a heart condition, whether it's hypertension or AFib or otherwise, now can there be a way for you to utilize the information that you're getting in terms of being able to better manage your health, give you better insights than what you're able to get maybe the hard way, which is you've got to go in and get an EKG, or you need to sit down, use a blood pressure monitor. And that's something that's friction in your way of measuring that regularly. If we can give people an easier way to do that so that they get the data that they need that can move them towards a better health status, that's important. So we think about it in the context of what hassles are we overcoming? What friction is being removed? Can we give people better insights, make that actionable for them in order to allow them to move down the road towards a healthier life?
Yeah, that's brilliant. And that explains why you guys are so successful, because you're really thinking ahead and looking at solving problems for folks that need to be solved. And along those lines, what kind of trends are you guys seeing in healthcare innovation that you're really getting excited about and you're seeing that are particularly exciting for the investment community today in healthcare and life sciences?
Well, many of those listening today, and Stan, similar to you, we were at the health conference last week, and every single company that was there was hanging out an AI flag. We've seen a number of these transitions occur, kind of demarcation moments in healthcare. I go back, as my gray hair will attest to when companies that we were investing in were buying servers and setting up server rooms, and you needed people to administer all those computers and upgrade them regularly. And then along came cloud computing. And what you found was that you can scale infinitely without having to manage all that expense. And the expense actually was lower than doing it on your own. Fast forward, a lot of the applications that you were building became available software as a service. So much of the infrastructure you needed, like a customer relationship management platform or things that you were doing, even going back to hosting your own email platform, you didn't have to do that any longer. You could now access Microsoft 365 in the cloud and not necessarily need an enterprise version of Outlook. And so all of those developments gave you the ability to be more efficient with the capital that was being invested and to scale what you're doing. When we think about the investment that's going in building the rails for AI, the dollars that are going into data centers and building out the compute power that will allow us to use many of the same algorithms we've been using in healthcare for a long time, but the ability to ingest more data and to provide better insights and to do that more quickly is becoming really powerful. And so for us as investors, being able to leverage the ability for our developers to develop more and more quickly, maybe even with fewer developers. Same thing for customer service, same thing for sales. And then as you start moving into clinical applications to use that as well. So the data that's coming off of a wearable, I can say to you wholeheartedly that a doctor does not want to see every measurement coming off of a CGM or does not want to see every indication that's coming off of your Whoop device or your Aura device or your Fitbit device for anything that it's telling you about your heart rate or heart rate variability. But the trends that are there and analyzing those trends and being able to provide early indications, predictability. Google just announced a health companion associated with their Fitbit devices. That's going to be more valuable than the device itself because of the insights that you're getting from that data. So that's what gets us excited. As you can tell, I'm about to jump through the screen, Stan, because use of these tools is going to make us, I think, better informed, and what we want are better informed and better connected health consumers.
And let's build on that a little bit. I love that overall perspective. It's so spot on. It's incredible. Where can wearable technologies address the gaps that you're seeing in healthcare, particularly in outcomes? And you're seeing just dramatic gaps in outcomes, particularly between low income and high income areas of the country. And then how do you guys and how does the investment community play a role in scaling these wearables that can address those gaps?
So for from our perspective, we think about using technology in ways that can help address the needs of those who may not be served well today by our healthcare system. That can be in our rural communities. That can be our urban poor. That can be seniors and the like. Wearable technologies that are convenient. I mean, imagine, the stigma associated with the senior who's wearing a lanyard and having to press a button that was sending an alarm saying, "Help, I can't get up," as opposed to having ambient technologies in some cases, or an easily wearable technology that allows them to be tracking their movements and to be able to predict whether or not they're unstable and might be leading to a fall. There's great advantages there. As an industry, we have to be careful about the digital divide. We want to make sure that these technologies are available to everyone, not just the wealthy of us who are able to afford the latest and greatest technologies. I think that we're going to see meaningful differences in rural health and being able to deliver care in places where people are driving many, many hours to get the care they need. The rural transformation grants that many states are applying for as part of the $50 billion that's been made available to do that will encompass many of these really interesting technologies that allow for people to be better tracked. A quick plug for biointelligence that's making available wearable technologies that individuals in those rural communities are going to be able to wear. Their data can be ingested in the cloud, and then they can get a virtual visit with a health coach or a nurse or a doctor to help them meet their needs. And so we see that the reach that we're going to be able to have using these technologies, wearable devices, things that allow us to get an earlier indication of where needs might occur, allow us to kind of move upstream to reduce the impact of some of those conditions, becomes really important going forward.
And last question, I promise, I know you're super busy and we'll get you out, but we've got a lot of entrepreneurs in the HitLab ecosystem, a lot of innovators, folks that are really pushing the envelopes. And you saw QuiMD from Israel, who've already gotten into the Mayo, they've gotten into University of South Carolina, they've gotten into Rochester, and they're getting into more. And so there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are really taking AI and getting it to the next level. What advice do you have for these folks? You've built so many great companies, 4 unicorns over the last 30 years. What advice do you have to them in this ecosystem where AI is closing the gap on how easy these things can, or how much more cost efficient they are to get going, cloud computing, et cetera? Do you have any words of wisdom you can pass on before you jump out?
Stan, HitLab does a great job in terms of being able to bring companies forward, make amazing introductions for them, and helping to integrate them into the healthcare ecosystem. And what a great kind of stamp of approval from coming through HitLab if you're coming as an entrepreneur and working through HitLab to go to market. AI is a double-edged sword. It's going to allow us to do many more things more quickly, but it's also a great equalizer. And so I think that where companies are going to be successful is around ways in which they can execute better than some of their counterparts. And so that means as you distinguish yourself, it may not be your idea that is the distinctive offering. It may be, again, in terms of execution, that's where the rubber meets the road. And so what I would suggest is your go-to-market strategy, your partnering, the relationships that you build in the market, being out there kind of moving quickly to get some of those key relationships is going to be critical. I think having the right backing, not only from a venture standpoint, but also partners in an ecosystem that you can bring to bear. Healthcare is a market, as Stan can attest to, that has a lot of fast followers. So those early stage companies, you mentioned the Mayo, people watch what the Mayo does. People watch what Duke does. People watch what Kaiser Permanente does. And then they say, well, how can we adopt it? If it's safely deployed there, we can go there. So find those companies in our ecosystem, those health systems, life sciences companies, health plans that are willing to go ahead and partner with you and engage, and then leverage that to get great data that you can share about the impact that your offering is having, and use that to kind of build that wedge into the market.
It's fantastic. Lee, thank you again for joining us today. Greatly appreciate your time, and enjoy a great Halloween weekend. Take care.
Stan, thanks so much for having me. Good luck with the rest of the symposium.
Appreciate it. All right. So you guys heard it here from Lee Shapiro. Again, one of the few people who are over the last 40 years have been able to put together multi-unicorn companies and not just transform healthcare, but do it for the improvement of and really closing the gaps of a lot of healthcare areas that we're seeing. And just extraordinary what he's done, what his partner Glenn Tolman has done from 7Wire, and just an extraordinary group of people at 7Wire in finding and where a need is, and then using capital to architect change in healthcare for the better. So again, hats off to Lee, and thank you for joining us today. Next up, we're going to be talking about wearables in the realm of clinical trials, a critical point of where wearables are making a big difference in the area of drug and device and biotech development. And with us is one of our board members from the Breakthrough Alliance, Divya Verma from Accord Life Sciences. Divya, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Stan.
Perfect. Handing it over to you. Take it away.
Thank you, Stan. Hello, Dr. Rutenberg. We're so happy to have you here. Welcome to our symposium. So I'm just going to introduce you very quickly. So Dr. Rutenberg, he's the Principal Director of Digital Safety and Decision Support at Genentech. Dr. Rutenberg brings deep expertise in integrating data science, clinical operations, digital technologies to enhance patient safety and clinical decision making. So again, thank you so much, Dr. Rutenberg, for joining us here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And I have to say, it was so great to follow Stan and Lee's discussion, because so much of what I think we may have an opportunity to talk about will build upon that.
I agree. I agree 100%. So let's just dive into this. To start us off, Dr. Rutenberg, how can wearables detect symptoms earlier in clinical trials? And what interventions could this enable to reduce disease severity?
Great question. So I think I want to start out with this idea of wearables and symptoms, right? Some wearables can easily detect symptoms, like if you have a respiratory patch or an acoustic sensor that looks at cough, right? Some wearables and many wearables do direct identification of symptom, or indirect, I should say, like a CGM itself, that may show that you've got hyper or hypoglycemia, and the symptoms that manifest with that, could be a variety of things, but it's the wearable here that's actually detecting the physiologic measure that will then correlate with those symptoms. I think the key reason that I love talking about symptoms, and I appreciate the question, is that from a clinical standpoint, right? We typically think about, whether it's in trials or clinical care, about the concept of both efficacy and safety. And everyone is very happy when efficacy is very good. But often what most clinicians have to deal with on a day-to-day basis are symptoms, some of which are disease-related and some of which are treatment-related. And the interesting thing about, if you think about sensors and wearables, is that certainly in the clinical trial realm, we often use these tools to be able to look at efficacy endpoints or support efficacy endpoints. So, for example, going back to something like a CGM, looking at time and range or glycemic variability, or an accelerometer may look at step counts and stride velocity, or an ECG patch will look at things like AFib burden reduction or arrhythmia-free survival time. But those same exact sensors can also detect safety events. So if you think about it, CGM, right? You can see if you're hyper or hypoglycemic. An accelerometer could detect someone falling or excessive inactivity at specific times. So this is really where these tools can be used in that type of a framework, so that you can detect both efficacy signals and safety signals.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Rutenberg. That was very insightful. My next question is from an implementation standpoint. What are some of the operational challenges and resource requirements when you're deploying wearables when it comes to clinical trials?
So this is probably at least a 1 to 2 hour long discussion. It's really, really complicated. So let's step back for a minute and think about safety, because that's really where our focus is, or at least my group's focus is, around using these tools in trials. So if you think about it, the goal is, if you can identify a symptom that may be treatment emergent, and if you can detect it early and then do something about it early, everyone wins, right? So from just the clinical trial standpoint, we talk about the severity of adverse events, like a grade 3, grade 4, severe adverse event versus a grade 1, grade 2. If you can identify a safety event sooner with these tools, and you can reduce the relative proportion of the more severe adverse events to the less severe ones, huge win for the patient, huge win for the sponsor, and even translating that into clinical practice, big win for payers and providers as well, and obviously, most of all, for the patients. So how we choose to be able to operationalize these tools in a trial really depends upon the sensor we're using and what we're using it for. So think about it. A lot of sensors and wearables that are being deployed in market, they're developed around identifying specific, again, symptoms or physiologic states that would specifically inform either primarily the patient, right? Patient is going to be using these things, they're going to look at it. So, but then the question is if you're using it to identify some kind of a safety event, is that what it was cleared for? or not. Because if it wasn't cleared for doing that, particularly in a clinical trial setting, that means that now it's gone from something which may have regulatory approval to being investigational simply because it's a different use. Similar kind of thing with the software that wearable was cleared with. Is that software designed for that purpose or not? And there are some companies where it's very easy to deploy their software with their wearable in a trial. But oftentimes there's a lot of other things happening in a trial where you may need a specialized CRO, or maybe there are some companies, for example, who explicitly don't want their software used in trials because it means being able to having to access their commercial cloud environment. So that means you'd have to use a specific vendor's software with that. And even if they are well documented and work together, now this puts it in the area of not just investigational, but software as a medical device or a SAMD. So that raises a lot of questions from a regulatory standpoint, which then has to find its way into everything from how you validate a quality management system for that and what the vendor is doing, what other types of supports. Then from an operational standpoint, once you actually get into a trial setting, then the question becomes, what do you do with this information, right? How do you act upon it? So if you are monitoring someone, for example, with a smartwatch, or you're measuring heart rate and they have tachycardia, what do you do with that? Is it episodic? Does it last for a few minutes? Or does it go on for a long period of time? And then the wearable is just numbers, right? There's no context behind it. It would really matter in that situation if the person was running up a flight of stairs or if they're sitting on the sofa watching TV, right? So in addition to just having the wearable, there's a need to be able to contextualize those numerical values. And those are becoming the domains of things like what we would call an event-triggered diary. So basically, you set certain parameters. If the patient's heart rate goes above a certain baseline level for a certain amount of time, you trigger a diary or a form for the patient to be able to say, oh, I'm sitting on the sofa, or no, I'm running upstairs. There's a lot of challenges around managing usability from a participant or a patient standpoint in being able to do this, but the context is critical. Then the next thing we have to think about is then what do you do with it? Do you leave it up to the patient or participant in the trial to actually do something about it? Or does it need to be more closely monitored? So it's one thing if what you're looking at is an event that is going to lead to some scenario where the patient themselves can act. But what if they can't? Who should be monitoring that? So there are ways in which you may say, well, then you could have, for example, a clinician monitoring it. Maybe it's a nurse or an advanced practice nurse or some other clinician who's monitoring this. They're not going to sit in front of their monitor 24/7 watching the numbers flow in, but maybe they will watch those events that are triggered. And then the question is, they have to act upon it. They have to interact with the patient. So I think in these kinds of environments, the real question is, how do you deploy that? How do you leave it up to each site? Because if you're doing a really small trial with a handful of sites, it may be easy. But if you're doing a global trial, I mean, not only do you have all the different regulations for each of those environments, but now you've got to potentially consider a centralized service that's going to be monitoring those, that's going to be contacting the patients, it's going to be advising the patients somehow to be able to seek the appropriate care. So a lot of complexity just to get to being able to implement this trial setting.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much. That was an amazing response, and I learned a lot, and it seems like it's way more complex. And to your point, I think we can talk about this for another hour. But thank you so much, Dr. Rutenberg, for that. I just wanted to, since we're out of time, I just wanted to thank you again for your time, your thoughtful insights. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. And I actually want to, connect with you again and talk more about this because it was so interesting.
Very much look forward to it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Divya.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Divya, and thank you, Dr. Rutenberg, for joining us today. Just incredible to hear these perspectives on how digital is transforming the ecosystem from patient, from physician, from everything from hospitals to radiology, labs, prescriptions, et cetera. So great to see and greatly appreciated for everyone coming on and sharing their experiences so that our innovation community, whether it's entrepreneurs or investors or buyers or government executives or academics who are proving this out, can actually get together and understand and develop better innovations through shared experiences and insights and perspectives. Well, really excited to have our own Jerry Antimano from the HITLAB talk to a extraordinarily new innovation platform that HITLAB has tested and verified called Bobby Health. And he'll be talking to the management team here from Bobby Health next about what they're doing. Jerry.
Yeah, cheers, Stan. Thanks so much. Some incredible conversations so far in our final symposium of 2026. And I'm fortunate enough to delve into the last half of the October symposium. And it's a pleasure to be able to welcome Dave Ezra and Mohit Kumar from Bobby Health. If you don't know about Bobby Health, there is some information on the HITLAB website about our recent engagement and collaboration with them. They're a really novel new maternal health platform that HITLAB has just engaged in a study with. But I think Dave and Mohit, you can certainly go into more detail around the work that you're doing as we talk about what Bobby Health is doing in terms of integrating wearables for much better outcomes throughout the pregnancy journey. But I'll hand that over to you, Dave.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jerry. Good to see you, Mohit. Yeah, thanks everybody. So I guess we'll start with the inspiration behind what got us started here. So Mohit and I both worked at a previous startup, which we were able to take to a successful exit. But for me personally, when I was asked to join the startup, it was a deeply personal mission. I actually felt a calling as this was early on the COVID pandemic, and this company was studying the effect of COVID and COVID vaccines on pregnancies. So I saw the opportunity to protect our most vulnerable populations. During that time while I was there, I really discovered that the methods that we're using, though good, clinically valid, were inadequate. We weren't utilizing the technology that was available to us to truly collect the data sets that can really identify adverse events during and post pregnancy, right? So what are these drugs doing to our women and babies? That's what I really wanted to know. I also saw that there was little value to the participants, right? There's altruism, right? I want to participate in a study that's helping the world, but it's clunky, right? And it takes time, and we really struggled to maintain study participants throughout the study. So it was actually later on, I was at MIT studying artificial intelligence at a postgrad, and I was asked to solve a problem with AI. And this was obvious for me, right? Every day, 800 women die from maternal related issues. 94% of it's avoidable. So I put together an idea to build a mobile app, an accessible mobile app that anybody can download on their phone. And we would utilize off-the-shelf wearables and be able to monitor real time, the health of the pregnancy for mothers and families. So I took this idea to Mohit and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And thank God he was on board. Right. So we've been at this for a couple of years now. But yeah, that's where we are. And I'm really grateful to be able to be a part of this great mission. Anything you want to add, Mohit?
No, totally resonate with your thoughts. And yeah, it's been a great journey and fulfilling as well, as we are set on a mission to make one of the most difficult journeys in the women's life better. So hope so we'll be going forward and making things even better. Our app would provide features that seamlessly, provide good results and are able to help many lives.
No, that's really fantastic, guys. I really love hearing that story, and thank you so much also for sharing those statistics, which I wasn't really aware of either. Mohit, I think you can go into a little bit more detail around how the platform integrates data from wearables like Fitbits and Garmin's and blood pressure cuffs, etc., into the app ecosystem that you guys have developed.
So yeah, our tech ecosystem is pretty seamless. We are able to integrate with Fitbit, Garmin, other any major variables because we are using standard APIs, just like Health Connect for Android, for Apple Health, for iOS we use Apple Health Kit. So we ingest metrics automatically as well as manually, such that we can have heart rate, sleep quality, activity levels, blood pressure, and weight. Now, this data syncs automatically into each user's personalized dashboard, where our backend models translate them into actionable trends. So, using them, for example, we are able to identify early fatigue, stress patterns, blood pressure, any variability that is happening in those trends that might need attention. And one more thing, now OBGYNs or care coaches are able to view these aggregated insights, and their clinical decision making also improves without overwhelming the user.
No, that's brilliant, and I think that I think that interoperability really helps, especially with so much that both the expecting mothers as well as the families and parents need to take into account throughout this journey. We'd love to also know, Mohit, in a little bit more depth, in what ways does the wearable data that comes from those devices enhance personalization and also that real-time support for these expecting mothers when using the platform?
Yeah. So if you see, Dave was talking about a startup we were working earlier. There, women over the journey of 2 years used to fill surveys. There were some set questions, static questions that used to fill. Why Dave's and I saw a problem in that? Because we don't get real-time data, and after a month, if I am reporting them, it might not be that accurate as well. So wearable data for us is able to provide continuous and real world context that allows us to go beyond those static measures. For instance, if a user's heart rate variability or sleep drops, the app may trigger a gentle prompt at that point of time recommending rest, hydration, or maybe a check-in with the provider, right, which are really important in that point of time. Our AI-driven personalization layer also combines the physiological data with behavioral inputs so that we can create dynamic pregnancy profiles as per the each user, and recommendations evolve as per mother's journey, body, and trimester improve. So as going ahead, we are able to accommodate those real world measures. And we are also able to bridge the gap between those clinical visits that are happening, because if we are able to recommend them on time, that would reduce mother's anxiety as well as empower her to actively participate in their own care as well. So holistically we are able to take care of this.
Yeah, I think that's super important, and you guys are really being able to offer that sort of two-way communication between physicians and the and the expectant mothers, which I think is really needed now too. Go ahead, Dave.
Jerry, I think in terms of stories, right? So Texas now, they're closing rural healthcare centers. So half of Texas counties, I think it's 48% last I checked, are maternal healthcare deserts, right? So the women that live in these areas have to drive sometimes hours to get to care, right? So if she doesn't feel well, right, if she's got a full-time job, kids at home, right, she's got to make a really difficult decision.
Mm-hmm.
Do I spend all day driving or go to work to feed my family? And a lot of these mothers are selfless people, right? They're trying to get things done, and they're less likely to think about themselves. Well, this technology gives them the information they need gives them the power to make choices for healthier outcomes. And it, like Mohit said, it also empowers their providers to get deeper insights into their patient's health outside of the clinic.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that, you guys are really focusing on that really important empowerment for both the clinician and the patient, which I think, really drives, the focus and the point that you guys are, are really honing in on. Just to close off, Dave, I always love to ask founders this in terms of sort of the overall technology landscape, and especially since this is a symposium focused on wearable technology, how do you see sort of that wearable technology evolving right now and in the future to sort of further improve, especially the focus that you guys are in terms of maternal health outcomes and postpartum care as well?
So we're really able to identify adverse events very early and act early. So that's the goal, right? Early intervention, reduce severity. So complications like preeclampsia, infection, hemorrhage, even mental health issues, right? We can alert the user for action and even provide her with local resources that can help her out. So a couple of things that are coming up that we're really excited about. One, the ability of wearables for blood pressure. Blood pressure is a really important metric for pregnancy health. So the ability to track that daily instead of asking the user to go somewhere, go to the drugstore or go to the fire department to get their blood pressure checked. We are able to send users that with high-risk pregnancies a blood pressure cuff. It's like $20. So the cost is very inexpensive now. But if she's wearing a watch that's able to sense blood pressure, amazing. Two, mental health. So this one's really, I'm really fascinated with this. And I think that we're going to be able to get a lot of really great insights into mental health, antepartum, postpartum. We have a kind of a doula inspired chatbot that Mohit and his team have built that the user is able to converse with and just talk about, ask questions, have a conversation, like use ChatGPT. It's not connected to the internet, so we're making sure that it's safe. It's not going to give false information. We can also get this thing, local resources, right? It can tell her, like, in fact, I was testing it out and I said, hey, I'm bleeding. I'm 32 weeks pregnant, by the way. I'm bleeding. What do I do? And it says, go in to see your provider. I said, I don't have one. It gave me a phone number to call. I said, well, I'm actually in Uganda. And it gave me a local phone number in Uganda to call and a website that I can use to find But here's what's fascinating about the mental health piece is we can do sentiment analysis on the chats and identify emotional state throughout the pregnancy, right? How powerful is that? And correlate that with activities, with exposures. There's so many deep insight I'm really excited about that we can pull from this capability. So those two things, blood pressure, mental health, are probably the biggest things that are coming up that I'm excited about. Mohit, anything from you?
No, totally resonate with it. And as you were talking about evolving with wearable tech, we will be surely providing a feature that you will be able to talk to the watch or whatever you're wearing and able to get personalized insights, not just go on the app, but rather talk like a person. So that feature is also in plan. So we'll have it out soon. And Dave, we have a question here about women co-founders, so you can maybe take that as well. I see someone Q&A that. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So Anne, she's out, I think, at a doctor's appointment with her children. Anne Villegas is our third co-founder. The three of us founded Bobby Health, and she's a biotech engineer from Germany originally. She's married to a United States Army soldier. So I served with her husband in the Army, and that's how I met Anne. She's amazing. I think 3 or 4 years ago, she published a book about pregnancy. So I knew that she was going to be the right choice to to join us in our great mission, and she has been. So unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us today, but yeah, if you want to reach out to her, it's Ann@bobbyhealth.com. She'd be happy to hear from you.
No, that's fantastic, Dave. Mohit, Dave, thanks so much for joining us. And as Dave mentioned, please do reach out to Anne, and of course, Dave and Mohit. By extension, we did pop their LinkedIns into the chat, as well as information about Bobby Health. And, gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Really, really important area of healthcare that you guys are covering in terms of breaking down those interoperability, mental and emotional health barriers on all of those different stages for pregnant women in the country right now. Thanks so much for coming on the program.
Jerry. Let's make pregnancy safer.
Absolutely. Well, wonderful to speak to Dave and Mohit. Please do check out the amazing work that they're doing with Bobby Health. And until next segment, I will hand back over to Stan.
Fantastic, Jerry, and great Q&A there. And again, congratulations to all the good work happening at Bobby Health. Next up, as you all know, mental health has been one of the cornerstones of the rise of digital health over the last 6 years. And we have here with us today Mike Meany, who's the co-founder and CEO of One Small Step, which is a very unique platform. Out of the thousands that the HITLAB reviews every year and the hundreds that we study, they have an extraordinarily interesting perspective and attack, if you will, on really helping people who are struggling with substance abuse and addiction. And Michael, great to have you on the program today. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Stan.
That's great. And if you could just give a little bit of background on yourself and your journey, 1 or 2 minutes.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So, hi, everyone. Mike Meany, founder and CEO of One Small Step. Really, we envision a world where access to high quality mental health care is as easy as hailing an Uber. This is a fusion of 2 parts of my life. So I'm a research scientist by background, and I spent an earlier part of my career building products at Facebook that were used by billions of people. And my dream was to kind of harness the talent and capital that I saw there and worked with there and apply it to these kind of massive social problems. A separate part of my life, I'm 12 years clean and sober myself, including nights and weekends, as we like to say. Nights and weekends are when the traditional healthcare system shuts down, and it's when ER visits spike. So we identify this problem and realize that like high risk mental health incidents are happening at night. How can we bring care to people who need it? And how can we have a labor force of trained, certified, quality professionals to meet people where they are? And so that's what we built.
Yeah, and I think, part of what we really like to understand when we're talking to founders and new technology platforms that are changing the world, and particularly within the symposium today, where we're understanding what wearable technology is doing in this area. If you could talk a little bit about how integrating wearable data, things like heart rate variability, sleep, and stress, can enhance real-time support and recovery insights for your population, your users.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of promising directions. I think a lot of it is still unrealized, if I'm being completely honest with you. So I can just share a story. I wear an Oura ring, and the most important signals I get are how well I slept and what parts of my day were stressful. And my wife is my greatest reminder that I need to hit a meeting or call my sponsor or do my own guided meditation practice. And invariably, it's when I slept like crap and I'm really tired, right? And so that's just an example of how the signals that these wearables are surfacing really correlate to, as we heard the previous panel speak, all of these onsets of mental health incidents. I think the challenge is we've yet to see systems at scale that plug in to a human in the loop endpoint. And so one of the earlier partnerships that like we're exploring is with an AI company that is like a pure AI company, and they're thinking about when they detect people escalating, can we be that human in the loop endpoint? And so I think the real opportunity for wearables is to utilize the signals to identify when people are stressed, and connect people when they need it the most. And I'll just share one more story. So I have some colleagues at Harvard Medical School that looked at not quite wearables, but it's an adjacent space, just like your phone and text messages, which is actually a type of wearable in some ways, right? And there was a number of relapse predictive points, and you saw spikes in text messages. So the few days before a relapse, you saw like a 10x spike, kind of like a manic episode, and then silence for like a week. And invariably, that was when someone was about to relapse, and kind of when these intervention points and human in the loop connection are most needed. And presently, we have the tech, but we haven't organized the system around these kind of use cases.
It's fascinating. Really, really interesting research. Yeah, we'll have to dive into that. And a big part of what you're doing, because of who you are, is just looking at the ethical components of wiring this data into a platform, particularly when you're working with sensitive behavioral data and biometric data. What are some of the challenges and some of the ethics that you've really prioritized when you've been doing this?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think in healthcare, it's often like the most important question. And we obviously are HIPAA compliant and like aligned with all of the guidelines at the highest levels of rigor and care. So I think like the name of the game here is informed user consent, informed patient consent, informed member consent. So on our platform in particular, we get like double informed consent. So when someone downloads our platform, they give us informed consent. And then before a member connects with the certified peer verbally affirms their consent when they're working with us. So we kind of hold ourselves to an incredibly high standard. And I think in this space, look, what we see in the evidence in the literature is that people don't mind their data being utilized to help them solve their problems. They mind if they don't know about it. And so like user consent, informed consent is really kind of the name of the game here. And so as long as there's user opt-in, I think that's critical. Now, there's use cases that in some ways can be quite frankly tyrannical, where there's not user consent. And I think we need to be really careful of those use cases, but hold ourselves to a high bar. Informed user consent should really be our North Star.
I think that's really well stated, Mike. Thank you for really coming out with that kind of statement and really the position there, and being a technology person like yourself and understanding this and the details there. I think that really shows that you're coming from a place of deeper understanding than a lot of folks that are building new tech platforms. When you talk a little bit more about wearables and technology like wearables and how they can strengthen accountability, how they can strengthen engagement, and just general community connection within a recovery program, what are you seeing and what are you building within One Small Step to help that?
Yeah. So yeah, it's a great question. And like I said, we're still pretty early days in terms of integrating where the signals from hardware and software are lining up with kind of human in the loop systems. So we think about it a few ways. One, we're starting to integrate with partners that have these signals. So we at One Small Step don't have a lot of the signals, but some of these partners, these AI companies, these hardware companies will have the signals. Actually, my CTO and co-founder is a former Garmin engineer. So we're like really actively thinking about all these different entry points. So I think partnerships is one. I think the second thing I'd say is that we have to think really critically about the user experience and what the signals are telling us people need. So if I haven't slept well and my Aura Ring is pinging me that, I might not need escalation to a human. I might just need to meditate for 5 minutes. And so at One Small Step, we're building a lot of asynchronous tools into our app that people can kind of like digest on the go. However, if my Aura Ring tells me that I didn't sleep well and I spent 50% of my day in high stress, then I probably need something higher, and where we need more human in the loop endpoints. And so that's kind of how I think about it, right? It's like a gradient. We have signals. We have to have the right interventions aligned with the right signals. And that's what we're trying to build.
It's incredible. And you're really one of the leaders in the country around this, and this ability to connect technology with humans to help evolve the relationship with substance abuse and substance abuse recovery. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing there. I mean, there's everything from AI to now avatars. There's a lot of different things coming together in the ecosystem. And again, you're one of the folks who you're with one of the big 7 tech companies before you started this, so you get it. And where are we going with this? What's your overall kind of view on where this is going to be in 10 years?
Yeah. So, it's a great question. And my mind jumps to just like where the gap is in the existing system, right? So we have these powerful AI models that like people are using. I mean, mental health care and companionship is one of the #1 use cases of AI. We can't be afraid of that. We have to embrace that. We have to train the models to be hyper responsive and ethical. But we have a shortage of mental health care clinicians. People are using these because they have no other option, right? So we have to lean into that. But then we also have these powerful human networks, and we know that human connection always amplifies and augments technology. It can't be replaced by technology. And so where the gap is in the system is kind of like the liminal zones and the infrastructure between purely digital interventions and human interventions. And look, I have a very strong view that human in the loop escalation systems are the future of digital mental health, because that's the bridge between AI and human connection. I mean, and we see this at Facebook, and this is probably underappreciated, but Facebook groups are one of the most high engagement points for people in early recovery. They find people who are like them that they can reach out to and get help from. And so that's just an example of where some of that connective tissue is, but we have a lot more work ahead of us.
We do, no doubt about it. The entire community does. And again, we're going to be looking for you to lead that way when it comes to substance abuse. So Michael, again, thank you so much for joining us here today and rooting you on, and looking forward to working with you. And again, for those of you who are not connected, look him up on LinkedIn. His LinkedIn is in the chat. Thank you, Michael, for joining us today. Take care.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Stan. And yeah, thank you all.
Super. And so we've got the 1 hour mark left to go. We've knocked out the first 2 hours of the program today, and we've got an hour 3 now. Latha Sethi, the founding investor for How Women Invest, will be coming up next, and then Jerry Antamano will be talking with a few folks. And let's go straight to Latha. And so, all right, Latha, can you hear me?
Absolutely.
All right, handing
Good
the virtual
afternoon,
stage
Stan.
over to you.
Excellent. Thank you. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, we can. Perfectly.
Excellent. So what a pleasure to join HITLAB again, and all these amazing innovators, investors, and of course, Stan, Jerry, and the team. I will kick the session off on the wearable revolution that we are seeing take place with Asha Tiwari. I will do a quick intro and then hand it over to you, Asha, for a quick intro, and we'll jump right in. Latha Sethi, former scientist, patent litigator, trial attorney, and about 10 years of practice in one of the oldest patent law firms in the world in Manhattan. I left and helped launch 2 different startups in the digital transformation space.
which subsequently morphed into much more cutting-edge technology, including in the legal and business sector. After the acquisition of both of those companies, which were funded by Sequoia Capital, Goldman Sachs, etc., I helped to launch How Women Invest, our first fund back in 2020. Now we're on Fund 3. Our focus is investing in female-founded startups in the United States, but simultaneously democratizing the investor side to bring in first-time investors who have never invested in venture or didn't know that was accessible or an option for them. And we're calling that Building the New Table. That's our Fund 3 for How Women Invest. And I'll get into more of that later. But right now, Asha would welcome you with a wonderful introduction about your background.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Am I coming through okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Well, it's nice to be here. Lata, nice to meet you and the rest of the team. I'm part of Amazon Web Services. I specialize in healthcare and life sciences digital transformation. So as part of my job at Amazon, I talk to the CEO, the CTOs, and the business leaders for the healthcare and life sciences customer segments. And get to share with them how cloud transformation, especially Amazon Web Services, is able to jumpstart that digital transformation in all their verticals. Happy to dive more deep into it, and it's really nice to be here and meet the rest of the team.
Thank you, Asha. And we're excited to have you here. I think our focus initially will be broader and would love your thoughts after being at AWS and et cetera in the digital health industry for many years. What do you see that's enabling the next wave of innovation in the wearable health tech space, leveraging things such as cloud technology and other digital tools that are becoming available right now?
Yeah, I think I'm going to answer that question based on, where cloud technology can help. Specifically, there are a few areas where cloud has got its niche. One is data processing at scale. You can never run out of storage with no heavy computation background demand on as required. So definitely data processing at scale is the number one for wearables. Then the next, there are a few other areas like, you're able to do real-time AI processing and machine learning. Also with cloud, the typical thing that I talk to the CEOs about is seamless integration across devices. So you can have an iPhone, a tablet, or even any of your wearables, Fitbit that you can talk about. And so there is cloud enables that seamless integration. Beyond some of the cloud things, you get into the where wearables play a role. So in terms of predictive health insights, real-time monitoring, workflow integration, and of course, data governance and security. So there's several ways that clouds can impact and accelerate the device and the wearables industry, but these comes to at the top of the mind.
Very good.
So
very good.
Okay.
And Asha, how do you see this playing a role in scaling and integration within healthcare systems and organizations? I mean, we all have our Whoops and our Auras and our individual tracking and health applications we've been using now for over a decade. But how do you see it scaling across larger organizations and the integration with things such as electronic records, et cetera?
Yeah, so the first thing, is, if since you talk about electronic health record, most of the hospital healthcare legacy systems are in mainframes or even old versions of Java. So the first thing that cloud enables is just purely that infrastructure modernization. The shift from on-prem to elastic cloud computing is where the punchline begins, is where you can realize you can scale without hindrance. A few other areas would be interoperability. You've all heard about FHIR and API standards. So API first ecosystems and FHIR enable those interoperable scaling mechanisms. with wearables, you come across a lot of data. It's beyond unimaginable amount of data that's available. So you definitely, cloud brings in this data normalization and contextualization, for example. One might call it steps, the other might call it activity. So that's where cloud is kind of normalizing the language and lingo across all the variable systems as well. Couple of things that I would point out is, one is also, with all these data coming in, you need some kind of real-time data streaming. Amazon has a lot of other services, I'm sure other cloud providers have as well, that enables seamless streaming. So that's especially what our CTO likes. When I talk to the CTO, that they don't have to think about infrastructure scaling at one variable at a time, and they can enable this real-time scaling, which eventually then goes to kind of the inference and the knowledge management at scale.
I think that's very important, and I'm sure you frequently answer questions about data security as well, in addition to the interoperability. Is there any thoughts or comments you have on that sort of data privacy? Because that's so critical, right? We all don't want our health information to be available in the public domain. Any thoughts on that personally or from the Amazon perspective?
No, that's a great question, especially in this day of cybersecurity that you hear about data breach. So in Amazon, you will hear security is job zero, and we do take that very seriously. So a couple of things that we do is, if you look in terms of cloud services, the number one thing that you want to recall is defense in depth architecture. What it essentially means is you have several layers of security built in. For example, network is isolated, data is encrypted in transit and at rest. You have DDoS protection, you have intrusion detection, continuous vulnerability monitoring. So there's all kind of services that a typically cloud provider does, as does Amazon, in ensuring that defense of depth architecture is maintained. In addition to that, there's stuff like identity and access management, basically giving the least amount of security to the proper roles and scaling from there. So we call it identity and access management. There's also, especially given then in healthcare, security and compliance kind of go together. So you have to have, especially for wearables, you need to conform to HIPAA. You need to conform to GDPR. There is HITRUST and other regulations. The part where cloud becomes extremely important in terms of security, compliance, and now we talked about interoperable, is most of these cloud platforms comes with this inbuilt technology and inbuilt accelerators. So I was just joining, and I heard the previous speaker talk about consent management, right? So the convergence of consent management, along with where patients can control who can access their wearable data, with the built-in security, with the cloud and interoperability, is where cloud can jumpstart either innovators like you or like typical healthcare and life sciences customers that I talk to.
It's a fascinating area. And along the same lines, Asha, have you any thoughts on how, the whole hospital in a home, where you have people staying at home longer, but yet being monitored probably even more consistently than if they had to be moved to a hospital? How do you see this whole, the cloud, digital tools, etc., playing a larger part as that hospital in a home grows with the graying of the American population?
Well, you bring up a good point. So before Amazon, I worked in a national provider systems, and hospital at home, one of was a major drivers of a provider system. First of all, if you are a wearable, innovator in the space, apart from all the cloud jumpstarts that I talked about, stuff that also that you need to keep in mind is data sovereignty. Who can look at your data and where. And in addition to that, especially talking about hospital home, the reimbursement model in hospital of home is pretty challenging. So when you're a wearable provider, right, not only do you need to, in addition to making sure that your wearable has a user-friendly mode for easier adoption, there are two other things that, as a wearable innovator, you kind of need to take care of, other than even the data privacy, is that one, it fits into the workflow of the user. If, for example, if your Fitbit, I have one here, is not very user friendly, then the adoption goes down. So in terms of just adoption of wearables, you kind of need to talk about how seamless the user experience is. If you're talking about patients. At the same time, the records that flow from your Fitbit, your scale, your blood pressure monitor, whatever it is that the patients use at home, it needs to kind of ensure that it flows into the clinician's workflow. Either of them, both of them rather, needs to be completely seamless. And what we call dual screen, the last thing the physician wants to do is look at an EHR on one screen and then turn to look at the wearables at other screen. So part of the experience that we've had is they all both need to, from the clinician and the patient perspective, they need to be very seamless at scale. And you need to talk about kind of your business model optimization too. The reimbursement laws are changing. It's not very simple. You also need to figure out, where do you want to do the trade-offs? You want to trade off between the user experience, or you want to trade off on the security. Neither of them makes life any easier. Then you need to overcome it. There's ways like biometric authentication, risk-based authentication, session management. So these are what we talk to in Amazon. We also have a healthcare startup. That's where these things that we talk about this is what you need to do when you want to move into hospital of home, along with the reimbursement challenge that we see with the payers.
Got it. I'm looking at all the different technologies that are developing and curious to get your thoughts on how AR, augmented reality, virtual reality, tools of that nature will play a broader role in healthcare. We at How Women Invest Funds just invested in a company called Vital Start Health, which uses sort of like the Google glasses to help women during various parts of their pregnancy, the birthing process, and postpartum. And it's fascinating how they're leveraging these tools. Any thoughts on how that would be relevant on a broader scale, AR and VR in this space, Asha?
Well, there is a place for AR and VR. So, as you know, right, any variables, it has a scale from level 0 to level 1. Level 0 being your Fitbits, which is kind of you just can buy in the market. And then level 4 and level 3 are called medical devices. They need to be approved by the FDA. So I'm not sure where your wearables that you're talking about in terms of Google Glass or others that come in AR, VR. Right now, in most of the time, to me, it lands in the level 0, like the Fitbits. Whereas a health monitor, a heart monitor, a cardiac monitor, or for example, the continuous CGM that you have, they go in level 4. To getting back to answering your question, right? So the data that these generate is crucial for a clinician to understand. So one of the things is, whatever algorithm that you use, it has to go through what we call in parlance is clinical validation. You cannot have an AI which is non-explainable to a clinician. Healthcare just will not allow it. And if you play in the AI and the Gen AI space, the black box algorithm is not going to fly. So you need to adopt models in any of these, whether it is AR, VR, or whether there's any of these other variables that you have. AI is a session part because you need to make sense of all the data that's coming in. but at the same time, you need to make that AI explainable. So there's various frameworks like SHAP and others that you can, build around to make AI explainable, because that clinical validation is literally is a non-negotiable when it comes to wearables, especially when they are classified as medical grade. The second part of the question, as I would kind of answer, is you have edge computing and then you have cloud computing. Edge computing is what I would call at the edge. So the computing takes place at the device, where you can give instantaneous feedback saying that, you need to adjust this, you need to sleep more, something like that. Cloud computing, on the other hand, is where the data goes on. So the real-time storage, the expansion of storage, that's tiered storage capacity, that is different. And cloud combines both of them. There's serverless architecture. For example, AWS has AWS Lambda, and I'm sure other cloud providers have others as well. These are all things that needs to come together to make sure that your AI is operating and your data processing is done at scale. Never mind whether it is, the devices that you mentioned or the medical grade devices.
Very helpful. We're running into closing time here. So my last question, would love a brief answer, Asha. Looking forward in this journey, how do you see cloud and AI technology shaping the evolution, between connected health and wearables? I think you touched upon it a little bit, but any conclusionary walk away that we'll ponder all weekend about?
Well, so here's a pet peeve of mine. Currently, preventive care is not the norm. So to me, that's where the wearables can go. Most serious illnesses are detected in the preclinical stage. So I see in the next 15 years, or maybe even 5 years, preventive care will be the norm. Chronic disease management is, I would love it to be transformed with the wearables. And then we touched upon it, we talk about personalized healthcare medicine or precision medicine. Definitely see healthcare being more personalized for a person, dissolving the digital divide and the geographical barriers, and essentially, putting the patient in the center. Major proponent of the last one, where I think if you really want to move the healthcare, you want to put the patient in the center and design the systems around them. And I think wearables has potential to do that.
Excellent thoughts and feedback. Appreciate your time, Asha. And thanks everyone for HITLAB for hosting this October symposium. I will hand it back to Stan. Have a great Halloween, everyone.
Thank
That's
you.
Wonderful, Lata. And thank you, Asha, for coming on the program. Lata, always wonderful to have you on and interviewing. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thanks so much. Okay, wonderful. Well, it's a wonderful start to the last hour of our Digital Health Symposium for October, and it's my pleasure to welcome one of our HITLAB founders that we have worked with in the past, physician Dr. Jacques Jospit, founder of the hugely successful Soho MD. If you haven't had a chance to check out the huge impact that Soho MD has had in improving mental health care and patient outcomes, please do check them out. We're going to pop Soho MD's website in the chat, as well as Jacques' LinkedIn. So I do encourage everyone to link in with Jacques and find out what they're doing right now. But Jacques, welcome to the program. Wonderful to have you back on. Would love to get a quick 30-second background on yourself, some updates around what Soho MD is doing right now, as well as diving right into where wearable technologies are playing a role right now in improving mental health care and patient outcomes.
Well, first, thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Stan, for having me here, and thanks to HITLAB, the general community. Thanks for all the work that you do. In terms of Soho MD, so I'm Dr. Jacques Jospit. I'm a psychiatrist with a background in business and tech. I ran a hospital for 4 years, ran a clinic for 3, and then started Soho MD with a colleague 14 years ago. Soho MD has really focused on high quality care, making it affordable for people. And what that got us into was finding ways to enhance care with functional medicine, where we think about biological drivers of psychiatric symptoms. And it ties into the whole wearable revolution, where it's when you're looking at data, you want to have clean data that you can find patterns in, that you can kind of connect the dots. And what we're looking at SOHMD is how functional medicine has given us some objective information that ties into psychiatric symptoms, nutritional data, endocrine data, data that's typically not captured when you purely look at the DSM in psychiatry. But by combining the DSM plus all this other physiological, nutritional information, now we're able to have things that we could connect to wearable data to both help with diagnostics, treatment, and monitoring of patients.
No, that's really incredible. What are some of the most promising ways to use that data that's coming from those wearable devices to sort of enhance that sort of experience and the personalized mental health treatment?
Yeah. So we're looking at ways of taking things like the Apple Health Kit, which is capturing just your general movement. And what's wonderful about it is, typically you think of data collection where people are filling out forms. You don't want to fill out a form, right? You got to fill out this questionnaire.
Yeah.
Having a passive data collection process, there's so many meaningful signals that are being picked up. And then what we're looking forward to is finding connections between what people are doing just passively and what's being captured, and then tying it back into what we're seeing in the clinic setting. So as we're making adjustments to their medications, to their nutrition, and how is that changing their activity level? Someone who's depressed, you might expect them to have low activity and then see that this is picking up. Or someone who has an Oura ring where you're seeing that their overall rest level is low, they're having poor sleep. And now because you've addressed the insomnia, you're giving them maybe a mood stabilizer, or you're giving them something that just help them with the sleep, that you're seeing again improvements there. So it's getting this confirmation that's more objective, because typically a lot of the work that we do in psychiatry is subjective. It's the patient coming in and saying, this is what happened. And so us having access to the cleaner data set, it really bodes well in terms of what we should be able to do in the near future.
Yeah, so it's the unsaid information, right, that you get from the patient, which I think is hugely impactful. You've been doing this for a very long time now, of course, both with and without the technology. Where and how would you like to see sort of wearable technology supporting clinicians right now in both tracking and also managing mental health conditions, especially in real time?
Yeah, it's the ability to make the data actionable. So I think clinicians as a whole, like, we're already dealing with data overload. We're dealing with things studies we have to keep up with. Just typing, and someone was mentioning how you're on two screens. It's the constant flow of data. So now for the average clinician who's just trying to get through the workday, and now you're saying we have to now incorporate all this additional information and put it into our treatment plan and have it be part of the process. The ability to have that data pre-processed and made actionable, made meaningful, where we're looking at the patterns in the data instead of the raw data, where some of the interpretation of how it relates to the conditions that we're trying to identify and treat, having some assistance with the technology to process that and let us incorporate it into our clinical assessment, into our treatment plan in an automated way. That's the key part. That's the exciting part, is as we're able to really make it more meaningful for clinicians, where we decrease the burden on the clinician's time. So we're enhancing the care, but we're asking less of the clinician. Instead of saying, here's more work, more things for you to think about, let's instead have less work, but the quality of the work that's being done is much higher.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think there's so many pros both to the physicians and clinicians as well as the patients, being able to sort of incorporate all this tracking and data management and so forth. But of course, there's also a lot of barriers as well, technological, ethical, clinical, to integrating a lot of these wearable devices, these wearable technologies effectively into the whole mental health caregiving. What are some of the barriers that you're sort of noticing now, from your perspective?
Yeah, I think a couple of the speakers hit on it. I think the interoperability. I think just the notion that we have to kind of create the framework and connect the different pieces, and just there are all these different platforms have their own format, their own structure, and there isn't any easy way to just connect everything. And so there are people working on platforms to help improve that and make it easier. But I think just the notion of having some sort of unifying language where all these different devices and all the different platforms can talk freely, I think decreasing the barriers between the different platforms and technologies, I think that will help with the evolution of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about evolution, looking a little bit ahead into the future, we'd love to hear about how data-driven tools and wearables might help to shape the future of the focus of psychiatry and digital mental health within the industry.
Yeah, it's a great question, Jerry. Right now in psychiatry, a lot of the way we think is really driven by the DSM. So it's really looking at, again, symptoms that, aggregate into disorders. And the wearable technologies really help with the transition to research domain criteria, where we're thinking about different circuits, different biochemistry, different genomic, just all these different more objective measures that we can now, well, in looking at the patterns that we see in the wearables, that might start creating a new framework of how to think about different psychiatric conditions, that the labels that we have now, that we're instead seeing patterns that are being caught in terms of movement, in terms of physiology, in terms of other aspects that are, again, more objective, that will give us cleaner process of coming up with what's really going on with this patient, and then tie into much more effective treatment plans. So there's a lot of room for improvement in terms of the way patients respond to care. We talk about how the service need for psychiatry is so high, there are not enough providers, and even the effectiveness of care may not be as high as we would want. This transition and the evolution where we do get a better way of really thinking about different mental health disorders and making it more biological. The adoption of wearables will make that happen. It'll enable that, where I think that we will see just, patients suffering less, that we're able to just help get people better faster. And I think that's the exciting part of wearables coming into play now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you were able to cover so many different points, so many different benefits, and so many different perspectives there, especially how that evolution is going to be happening and is happening right now as well, Jacques. Well, it's great to have you on the program, Jacques. You certainly taught me a good number of different things around, how mental health treatment is evolving through the wearable technologies that are now readily available and how it's going to go into the future. I do really encourage everyone to connect with Jacques and find out more about what Soho MD is doing. And looking forward to have you back on the program again in the future.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jerry.
Jacques, pleasure. Okay, wonderful. Well, along with Jacques and all the other amazing speakers that we've had on the program, I certainly encourage everybody attending today as we close out the last half hour of the program to run back through the chat and connect with all of the amazing speakers today that we've had on the life sciences side, the pharma side, the tech side, and of course the founder side as well. So many amazing speakers, so many amazing insights, and they're all certainly open to carrying on some of those conversations that you've heard today, albeit in a very short time frame in each of the sessions that we've had. But that's the whole idea of really bringing the community together like this to be able to continue those discussions beyond these virtual walls, essentially. And as I mentioned, the conversations don't have to stop here, despite this being the final symposium for 2025. We are looking into 2026. And also today, we're going to be continuing our Center for AI Testing and Evidence, or CATE, knowledge sharing sessions with Tim Gilchrist today, who's going to be looking at AI in healthcare and emerging AI market trends at 4 p.m. Eastern. So if you haven't joined the CATE community already, I'll have the team pop the link in the chat for you to join and become part of the really active community of CATE. You can also explore the other communities around Breakthrough Alliance and Emerging Technologies, and of course Women's Health Tech Initiative as well that Amy West leads at the lab. So I do encourage everyone to check out those different focus centers of excellence or initiatives that we're putting together. So to close out the last half hour, before I go into that, we are also still looking for speakers. The conversation again will continue into December, but this time in person at the HITLAB Summit in New York City at the Microsoft Center just off of Times Square. We have some late breaker spots opening up now, and since we have the main program as well as multiple symposia that you can get involved in, from supply chain to AI, to investment, to digital pharmacy and biomarkers and cancer care. So I do encourage everyone to check out the website, head over to hitlab.org/get-involved/speak if you are interested in sharing some insights at the event, and let us know what you'd like to talk about and what you'd like to get involved in. You should hear back from the team if there is some synergy with the programs that we have on. As we go into the final stretch of the program today, we're going to be rounding off with a conversation between Stan and Sriman Banerjee from Takeda, and then I'll finish off today's Digital Health Symposium with a chat with one of our amazing startups, Najid Kazam from Rewire Digital Therapeutics. But without further ado, let's start rounding everything off, and we'll pass it over to Stan and Sriman, who are going to talk about smart packaging in the ecosystem and connecting pharma technology and patient care. Over to you guys.
Fantastic. And we are really fortunate to have a leader coming online now and talking to us a little bit about what's happening in the wearable revolution when it comes to the intersection of health and technology, specifically in the smart packaging ecosystem when it comes to working with patients in connecting life sciences and technology and patients. And with us is Sriman Banerjee, and he's the head of diagnostics, software, devices, and packaging R&D at Takeda. And we are going to hear a little bit more about what he's doing at Takeda to make sure we get a good understanding. Perspectives are so important in forming relationships and alliances of what's happening with the smart packaging ecosystem, not just at Takeda, but in general within life sciences, and how he's bringing together collaborative models that help bridge pharmaceutical companies, innovation, digital technologies, healthcare delivery all together. So we're going to hold a discussion now about highlighting how smart packaging is transforming medication adherence, which is so important in clinical trials. Ultimately, it really leads to more patient engagement. And at the end of the day, when it starts to move from clinical trials to commercial, how that incredibly improves connected care, which means people get the right interventions at the right time. So with that, Sriman, great to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Stan, for the kind invite, and look forward for the conversation over the next 10 minutes.
And would like to start with your definitions. I always like to start talks, lectures, classes, whatever, with definitions. So maybe you could start with defining what is smart packaging and what kind of innovations are driving its evolution in the ecosystem today.
So it's a good question, and for this we will have to take a step back a couple of years, and I would mention as smart packaging has always been there for a number of years now, albeit mostly in physical form. As an example, as shelf life indicators, color changing indicators, etc. And they were those days termed as active packaging or intelligent packaging. However, over the years, with the evolution of digital connectivity and the ecosystem, smart packaging has become more in the digital domain space with connected smartphone use of whether it's QR code, NFCs, Bluetooth, etc. So as technology has evolved, smart packaging has also evolved in that space.
Which makes it... Go ahead.
Yeah, and it integrates mainly the active, intelligent, and connected functionalities into one, which is then defined as smart packaging.
Okay, that helps a lot. And those definitions are so important when lining up a conversation. So tell us a little bit more about how you're seeing this idea of smart packaging improve the patient experience with medication adherence, and then how that's supporting what professionals, physicians, pharmacists, what they're trying to do, particularly in this new remote patient monitoring and this remote care management world. How is this all coming together?
Absolutely, Stan. And I'll again give a correlation between how some of these physical form factors and I would say smart packaging, which used to be earlier, has transitioned now into the digital framework or the digital space. So again, I mean, historically, many of the blister packaging we would put in the days of the week, or even in many circumstances more detailed in terms of dosing, etc., which would make it easier for the patients to read and use the medication and therefore adhere to the medication regime. However, with the introduction of digital and smart technologies, this can be connected to your smartphone, and therefore you will get alerts, reminders, and you can also now track your medication on your smartphone. And it also helps caregivers because, mind you, we also know that globally we have an aging population. And in those circumstances, the caregiver provides the medication to the patients, and that's where some of these technologies are much more supportive and helpful.
All right. So that then brings me to, you talked about caregivers, and that means, okay, we're really talking about how we're seeing inter-stakeholder collaboration now in the healthcare system. And that's a very big difference between today's connected healthcare system and the one 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even. And so, what other collaborations are you seeing between pharmaceutical manufacturers, technology companies, and how are they coming together to help build these kinds of smart packaging ecosystems?
That's a good question, Stan. And as we have more connectivity within the healthcare environment, and healthcare, we will have to see it through the wider and the broader perspective, which is healthcare would include not only pharmaceutical companies but also pharmacies, the healthcare professionals, doctors' offices, and also technology providers. I mean, just to give you an example, all the individuals who actually wear Apple watches, they actually carry a digital health in their arm in some shape or form, because Apple watches can, read your pulse and other things as well, right? So, I mean, in the digital ecosystem now, it's far wider than what we would think 20 years back. And therefore, there is a lot of collaboration within this ecosystem to provide a very good patient experience in terms of the therapeutic area which they are enrolling into, but also giving them a much more support in terms of adherence, guidance, and other areas which are needed with complex therapeutic areas.
Okay, so that really does dive nicely into this next question around regulatory frameworks. So effectively what you're saying is we're seeing a lot more collaboration across stakeholders and ecosystems. And then what we're also seeing is different regulatory frameworks being reconstructed now with this administration. So what kind of regulatory models are governing and evolving to support these kinds of cross-stakeholder innovations that are changing healthcare in connected packaging and digital health products?
So, I mean, there are digital frameworks and packaging as well as medical devices frameworks around the regulatory space. This is an evolving piece as well. The various classifications would depend on, what what I would say services or what options are being provided to the patients. And I would leave it at that, for the simple reason is the classification would depend on lot many features than something which I would not like to be misinterpreted when I speak here.
Yeah, you got to be careful when you start touching the regulatory line there. You got to be very careful, no doubt about it, and don't want to get you in trouble. So that's not our job. And lastly, what can we expect to see over the next 5-10 years when it comes to smart packaging in the ecosystem? And what are you thinking will be the most exciting part of the Digital Health Symposium in smart packaging coming up in December 2, 3, 4 at the Microsoft Tech Center in New York City?
So Stan, I would say, packaging overall has evolved over the last, I would say, 2 decades, and particularly for pharmaceuticals, it has evolved over the last 1 decade in terms of providing patient-centric solutions to the patients. And this evolution is key as it comprises of not only the physical form factor in many circumstances, but also the digital form factor, which is now slowly getting integrated into the packaging. This enables patients in terms of the adherence to the drug product, but also enables patients in terms of providing and linking to the wider ecosystem in the digital space. So we see a lot of benefits here. As technology evolves, we will see more applications coming out of it, and more, I would say, patients getting into programs of this nature.
It's fantastic. Sriman, thank you very much for joining us today on the symposium, and looking forward to seeing you at the symposium coming up on December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And for anyone that wants to hear more about this and be a part of those conversations, don't forget to sign up and be a part of the summit and the symposia happening December 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Thank you, Sriman.
Thank you, Stan.
That's amazing. Great conversation there between Stan. Thanks so much to Sriman for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have his insights on the program. You can hear certainly more from Sriman at the Fall Innovators Summit in New York City. As I mentioned earlier, we are still looking for some late breaker speaker spots. So do visit the link that the team is putting into the chat now if you do want to share your insights, or even have a nomination for someone you think may be a good key opinion leader in one of the tracks at the summit. And to round off the October 2026 Digital Health Symposium for the last time, I guess, this year in terms of symposia, I'm having a conversation with Najeed Kazam, CEO and co-founder of Rewire Digital Therapeutics, talking a little bit more about how digital therapeutics is empowering clinicians and redefining patient care. And if you are interested in the work that Rewire is doing, I do encourage everyone to connect with Najeed and the team. Team's putting their LinkedIn details and the Rewire link in the chat. And we'll go right to that conversation now. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming on for today's Digital Health Symposium. I'm fortunate enough to be joined today by one of HITLAB's founders and startups, Najeed Kazam, CEO and co-founder of Rewire Digital Therapeutics, really doing some great work in the behavioral change space. Najeed, those of the audience that aren't familiar with the amazing work that you guys are doing, we'd love to get a quick 60-second background on both yourself and the team and also the company.
Of course. Jerry, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I'm disappointed that we're not in person, but this is a way to get to more people and to build more community. And so I'm very thankful for the work that you and Stan and the entire HITLAB team are doing. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
It's a pleasure to be here and introduce myself. My name is Najid Kassam. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rewire Digital Therapeutics. I'm a recovering lawyer. I apologize in advance. I'm a father, a husband, and mostly I'm an advocate for mental health and behavioral health access. And the work we're doing at Rewire is so central to that. At Rewire, we build assessment, monitoring, and therapeutics for chronic depression and other behavioral health conditions. Well, at least hopefully in the future. Right now, we are very focused on building something that is going to help to solve the chronic depression epidemic. For those of you who don't know, chronic depression, sometimes called PDD or persistent depressive disorder, it's terrifyingly prevalent in the world today, and it's only getting worse. Tens and tens of millions of Americans, hundreds of millions of people across the world. I think depression as a whole is the world's #1 disability. And in the United States, there is a lack of access to treatment. There is still stigma around it. There is still a lack of great data quality. And so at Rewire, we're building a technology platform for both patients and clinicians to help to solve this epidemic. We have an amazing team full of builders, engineers, neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, psychologists, just a great, wonderful, amazing, and inspiring group of people that I get to work alongside with. And we are very proud that we've built our prototype. It's being currently validated by a cognitive modeling lab, and the first version of our platform and commercialization will begin next year. So we're very excited. We're honored to be here, and we're very passionate about working towards this big and vitally important problem. One other thing I'll add to that is what scares us the most, or at least me as a dad and as a member of our society, is it's getting worse. There was a rise, I think it's 18% in chronic depression from 2020 to 2024. That is a giant that's a giant growth rate for something as dangerous as chronic depression. And the scary thing about so much behavioral health is it's so much comorbidity, anxiety, PTSD, ADHD. I can name so many of the comorbidities. And this means that there are people that don't have access to treatment, that don't have access to the right treatment, and they feel helpless, but they still have to go to work because it's chronic. It's not major. It's not, the spikes aren't as big as in major depression. And so we're really excited to be building one of the first tools to ever support, treat, monitor, and engage with folks with chronic depression. It's exciting, it's terrifying, it's important work.
No, it's certainly important. Really excited to see where you guys are going, and really honored to be part of at least a small part of your journey.
No, we're so grateful, Jerry, for HITLAB. I mean, you guys kick our backsides every call we have. You push us, you open doors, it's a real honor to be a HITLAB incubated company.
No, that's really wonderful. And thanks for sharing those stats as well. Like something
I might be off by a percentage or here. It's memory I'm going by, but the numbers are terrifying is the short answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really wasn't aware of that. So I certainly learned something new right from the offset of this conversation.
Actually, you know what? The New York Times, Jerry, did an article. I think it was like a year or so ago, and young people will appreciate this because I'm hoping there are some young folks, under 30s in the audience. And I think the byline or something in it is, that meh feeling, MEH, that you have, that's got a name, persistent depressive disorder. This is something that even the New York Times is talking about as a societal problem, and it underscores just the scope of it. And it's not surprising that even someone as informed as you, Jerry, don't understand the pervasiveness of this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm glad you bring a lot of this stuff to light, and not more so in the platform you guys are building. And there's always, talk around how digital therapeutics is, really redefining a lot of the way that clinicians are delivering personalized care and tracking patient progress and so forth as well. So from your point of view and your perspective from where you're building the platform, especially, how is digital therapeutics sort of redefining those sort of pathways?
I think we have to be careful because medicine is a very old profession, one that is protected by a lot of past data, a lot of past tradition, a lot of past fears. And so if we look in the very short history of digital therapeutics, the first wave of digital therapeutics made a lot of mistakes, as the first waves of anything do, of course. However, one of the ones that we're trying to learn from all of them, to be clear, but one of the ones we're really trying to learn from is the fact that I don't think the first cohort round wave of DTX engaged clinicians and empowered them and supported them. You know, one of the reasons there was a degree of hubris, Jerry, that digital therapeutics would replace the need for XYZ treatment, or, you know, it would, instead of being a part of the clinician answer. And so our approach is we need to empower clinicians, support them in their very important work, meet them where they are, and help to move them a little bit more innovatively. It's a more evolutionary than a revolutionary approach. So, you know, one of the ways that we're doing that is we're taking evidence-based treatments, especially on the psychiatry, psychology side of it, and building it into the work we're doing. One thing I completely forgot to mention is the patient side, the vast majority of the patient side of our platform is actually delivered through a mobile game on a phone. Obviously, the clinician side is not. So the clinicians have to do real work, unfortunately. But the patients, we're delivering it them through gamification and actually a mobile game. But in doing that, instead of that bringing fear for clinicians, what we're actually doing is saying, look, we've actually translated evidence-based therapies like CBT and DBT and behavioral activation and into the game mechanics and actually the gameplay. And so while clinicians can do the important work when they're meeting with their patients, whether it's a therapist meeting on a monthly or biweekly basis, whether it's a psychiatrist meeting on a quarterly or annual basis, whatever the cadence is, we help to fill in the gaps and provide continuous objective data collection from patients so that clinicians can monitor their patients, they can understand their states, and they can be better informed in the very short amount of time they have to treat this epidemic.
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead. Just one more thing before I let you poke and prod is that I think one of the challenges that clinicians in our user research and just generally have outlined to us is that something like depression, the evaluation, the diagnostics, the monitoring is often so subjective and heavily reliant on self-reporting or interviews or observations. But the reality is, unfortunately, this pure qualitative data essentially is inconsistent. It's infrequent. It's influenced by bias. And that's structurally the problem. You cannot give a PHQ-9 every 10 minutes. It doesn't work, right? And so because of that, the input that clinicians are being forced to make decisions on for treatment is based on data that fluctuates, that's so imperfect, and that actually, it's only a snapshot essentially, right, Jerry? And so if we can say to clinicians, do your important work, we're just going to add a really valuable data layer and support these patients with therapy and between visits. To us, that's meeting them where they are and then providing, of course, clinicians with great clinician databases, integrating into their electronic health records, giving them support, giving them raw data, giving them aggregated data, showing them trends, even eventually building models with predictions. But at the center of it is the clinicians. And that to us is super key. Does any of that make sense?
Yeah, no, I really like that. And not to turn this into an AI conversation, since this isn't really an AI-centered symposia, but
unfortunately, Jerry, every symposium is becoming an AI symposium, whether we like it or not.
That's true. But I like the way that you sort of, outline the digital therapeutics is meant to be sort of that supplementary piece, right, to what the physicians.
And for some, from an access to care perspective, maybe it's the only thing they can. 170 million Americans don't have access to mental health care. I'm not saying it can't be there, but I'm saying instead of trying to turn over the boat and start again or with a revolution, let's support clinicians and augment their important work, whether it's in their work or to support bringing people into them or access to people that'll never access them.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're totally spot on there. Let's talk about the differentials though, in terms of what digital therapeutics provides, especially in terms of the traditional telehealth or wellness apps that are sort of out there, especially in terms of the clinical validation and outcome side of things.
So I have to be careful. I run a digital therapeutics company, and I don't want to be seen to be speaking ill of an incredibly important industry in wellness. Because of that gap in mental health care, the wellness apps do provide a really important place in this marketplace of treatment and support and engagement on mental health and depression. So that's really key. But for us, the way that we think about it, the way that I think about it, because I can't speak for everyone on my team, blanket, is that we are a very scientifically backed piece of technology. We are very focused on chronic depression. We are specific to an indication. We have research papers and PhDs and psychiatrists who have guided, built, and consulted on what we're doing, and it's focused on a specific condition. It's not a general thing. And so I think that's one big differentiation. The second thing is the relationship with the regulators. For example, at Rewire, our work is our neural assessment, part of our monitoring tools, have an FDA clearance. So there's a set of rigor that we feel is important for us. The second thing is, as we build more, there's a strong possibility we do additional FDA or other regulatory. So that regulatory piece is important and key. And I think that whether it's a regulated or a partially regulated product, there is a degree of clinical trial rigor. Call it clinical, call it real world evidence. There's a trials component. We're not just building something and saying, this is going to work. We're saying this did work. Here's the data to show that. And so, those are all important. And I think from a business economics standpoint and the commercialization aspect, digital therapeutics have reimbursement codes. They have relationships with insurers and payors. They have relationships with clinicians in a more direct way. So there's a slightly different business model. I'm not speaking ill of either, and there are definitely benefits and drawbacks to both. But for us, the way that we think about it is, these differentiate us from a wellness product and our class, digital therapeutics, from these kind of wellness apps.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I know we're coming close to time.
Oh gosh, sorry, I talked too much.
No, not at all. I could certainly talk to you for much longer about some of the other ideas that you've got and some of the things you've already brought up today. But I certainly encourage the audience to connect with you as well.
Please do. LinkedIn, email, whatever it is.
Exactly.
Please.
Yeah, we'll pop your LinkedIn into the chat, and I encourage everyone to check out what Rewire is doing, of course, and connect with Najid to continue this really important conversation as well. But I think it'd be good to round off the conversation today, Najid, in terms of talking about the challenges that you've seen, especially from your perspective and your viewpoint, that remain in scaling these types of adoptions, especially, of course, on the digital therapeutic side, whether it's on the regulatory, reimbursement, clinical trust side, and how they should be addressed from what you can say.
So I want to start by saying, I don't know that I'm the expert in anything in life. I'm as a young parent with young boys, I learn I know pretty much nothing about anything very frequently. However, I will share my opinions if that's okay, Jerry.
Of course, yeah.
And a couple of them. I think I want to start with talking about clinicians and how important it is to partner with clinicians, because meeting them where they are, understanding what they need from digital therapeutics and why it's valuable to them, and they are the front line. They are the people who are the experts. They are the right people to be partnering with. And I think at industry level for digital therapeutics, my only piece of advice would be that if for digital therapeutics as a whole, and for specific folks like us at Rewire, for us to be successful, we need to be clinician engaged. It doesn't mean we need to only be building for clinicians. It doesn't even mean that companies to build at all for clinicians, but clinicians are at the forefront of this, whether they're psychologists, in our case, psychiatrists. If you're doing, for diabetes, it would be, cardiologists and this, and totally it's so important to meet clinicians where they are and to have their support and make them advocates and passionate advocates for the work we're doing. On the regulatory side, I think we're seeing some opportunities actually. Obviously, DIGA in Germany is the most forward. They've got PATHs, they've got the most supportive digital therapeutics of maybe any country in the world. But even in the US, with the current administration, I think it's Make America Healthy Again is what you folks are calling it.
Yeah.
They're extending digital therapeutics billing codes. They're extending monitoring. There is a window now that needs to be gone from a sliver to a crack open to allow the regulatory process to go faster, to allow the reimbursement better. And I think, you know, on a digital therapeutic side, despite the cost and the challenge of doing clinical trials or real world evidence trials, I think for the challenge is it's expensive, it's hard, it's messy, it's difficult, but the value it can create is real because your currency you're building is trust from clinicians, from patients, from insurers. And so those challenges also leave opportunities. And I'll leave with one more. You know, we're at an intersection society where there's so much data and security is going to be so important. So the challenge for all of us that are building in the digital therapeutic space, and I would argue even in the wellness space or the medical adjacent spaces, to be data privacy and security first. The more machine learning or even generative AI, especially generative AI that's being used in health tech, we need to be sensitive to patients, their worries, their fears, but also we have a moral and ethical obligation to protect their data. And that's a challenge that I am confident can be overcome.
Yeah, I think some really important points to wrap up with, Najib. You know, the clinician focus and the data privacy and security aspects as well. You know, that we should really consider.
Absolutely.
Najib, thanks so much for coming on today.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, Jerry.
It's really awesome to have you on. Wish we had more time to
Thank
chat.
you. Well, next time maybe you guys will give me an hour. We can talk more.
I'll talk to Stan about that for sure.
Perfect.
Wonderful to have you on the program. I encourage everybody to connect with Najib, find out
Please do
about the good work that Rewire is doing. And Najib, we'll have you back on the program soon.
Thanks, Jerry. Have a great day. Ciao.
You as well. Thanks so much. I'm sorry, I'm on mute. I apologize. Amazing final conversation to wrap up our October Digital Health Symposium with Najib and the Rewire team there. I do encourage everybody on now to connect with him, the Rewire team, all of the other amazing speakers that we had talk about digital therapeutics and wearable technology, mental health, and all of the other amazing insights that were shared from all of our speakers today. I do, of course, want to also thank the amazing team that we have at HITLAB that's brought to you all of the programming this year at the Digital Health Symposium, the Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, and our summits, one of which is coming up in December. So I do encourage everybody, if you are free the week after Thanksgiving, or the American Thanksgiving, if you like, first week of December, you are certainly invited to look at the tickets that are available to purchase. Join us for Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. That is still going to be going strong all throughout the year until the middle of December, before we wrap up for the holidays and go into 2026. Do send us some suggestions about what you'd like to see at next year's symposia. There is 25% off summit tickets right now, as I mentioned. So please do look at the links that the team has put into the chat, whether you're interested in attending the summit or whether you are interested in becoming a part of one of the Centers of Excellence, Breakthrough Alliance, Women's Health Tech, or the Center for AI Testing and Evidence, or CATE. And as I said, amazing team behind us that has put together the symposium, the Women's Health Tech Wednesdays, the summits, and all of the other events in between. Rachel, Ansley, Raymond, Pallavi, Melissa, Nico, Rijo, Amy West, and of course, our amazing leader, Stan Kichnowski, without whom you would not be able to get all of these various different insights from all of the important topics that are going on in digital health and health innovation right now. And thank you to our partners from the Merck Global Health Innovation Fund, FFF Enterprises, Microsoft, IMC, Helix VM, Fin Partners, and Actual Healthcare Solutions, just to name but a few. And if you are interested in becoming one of our partners or one of our sponsors, especially for the HITLAB Summit coming up or one of the programs in 2026, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn or reach out to Stan or email me directly if you have my email. And we love to chat about how you can support our programs in the coming year. And from me and the rest of the HITLAB team, it's just a little past 2 o'clock Eastern. Thank you for joining us for the final symposium of 2025, and look forward to seeing you all on the next symposium in 2026.